121 towers within a 4-mile radius of our homes. 121. There are actually 331 antennas located that are just that are not registered. So those are the registered ones. There's a picture right here of all of the towers kind of close up right there, and the little red dot is where the Shrine Club would be. Now you notice that right there, it's all residential. All around that is residential. That's why we don't have a tower built right there, because it's a residential area. And I found articles that show that, contrary to what was said, that there are problems with property values. Of the 1,000 people who responded to one survey, 79% said that under no circumstances would they ever rent or buy property within a few blocks of the cell tower. There's suggestion now that there's a heightened awareness of potential risk from cell towers, cognitive and physical from radiation. Also in a podcast that I just listened to the other day, Alan Holmes from the Center of Public Integrity said that cell towers do lower real estate values, and the RF waves pose potential risk to residents. I took from T-Mobile's own site, and I looked, and it says they have good coverage. They have good coverage in our area. They don't have a problem. And as you can see, I've circled Columbus right there, and that's T-Mobile. Then, according to the site, I even pulled up the other 4 major, they have comparisons, and I pulled up the other 4 major plans, Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, and they all have awesome coverage in Columbus. There are no dead spots. There's no problem with their coverage. Also, I pulled up a picture right here, and it shows where the Shrine Club is, and it shows there's Clubview and Richards and Hardaway, and there, again, it just shows that it is in very close proximity. And according to even one of the members of the planning board, that there have been many attempts at people putting cell phone towers in the location of schools, near our schools or on the school property. But those have all been null and void because, of course, they're also thinking about the health risks and the research that has been done with the health dangers that come from those RF waves, radiation, that could be of a concern to our children and their future, their health. And so nobody wants a cell tower right there on the property next to a school, because in 20 years we don't know what may happen to those children. And right here I even pulled up, and I have a copy if anybody would like to see it. I made a copy for y'all that shows that cell towers emit these radio frequency waves. They're electromagnetic fields, and these fields can't be seen or heard, and they expose people to many diseases. And so inside the study, it tells you children schooling nearby within 300 meters of cell towers had a total exposure of radiation 3.5 times higher than children with cell phone towers further away. And inside it talks about the sleep disturbances, headaches, difficulty concentrating, cardiovascular things. And in here, the May 2011, the International Agency for Research on Cancer and at the World Health Organization evaluated and declared RF radiation of the type transmitted between cell towers and cell phones as a possible human carcinogen. And so, and then it goes on, and I won't bore you with all of this, but it does have references. I have references to all this in the back. So, like I say, when we moved to this area, it was back in 1963. It was a wonderful era. The Shrine Club was the Moose Lodge at that point, and they had a swimming pool, and it was just a wonderful place. We were sort of a little piece of country in the city because we had the creek bordering us. We were actually, it was before the 185 was even built, and so my land was actually part of Hilton Heights. And so, you know, then they built the 185 stretch through there. And anyway, it's just, you know, we love our area. We love our area. We've moved there for, you know, the wonderful things that we could have, like, you know, Clubview, Richards, and Hardaway. And so, like I said, here's one article that I found that was on News 9. It's been a while back. And they said, City Council votes against the cell towers. And it said, I want, you know, that there are other options. And that's what I want you to know. There are other options out there. There are other areas, such as the defunct cross-country plaza area back there where the Goodwill is on there, and they have the driving school back over in there. It's probably already zoned for something like a cell tower. And other areas, I mean, that's close enough to where it would probably, they were saying last time that I mentioned the Kmart property, and they said, oh, well, they're looking for somewhere closer this way. And I said, okay, well, we'll go a little bit closer this way, but not right on top of houses. So you're not, you know, hurting our children who are walking to and from school, or either just living, you know, I mean, just them living right there. So it would be my pleasure if you would please prayerfully consider everything about this decision. Our residents that are, you know, against this, and their children and grandchildren. Thank you so much.
Okay, you want to?
Would it be permissible for me to address certain issues and have Colonel Throckmorton also highlight? There's some areas. I'm sorry.
Before you do that, we have some counselors who have some questions. So if you want to just wait and address all of them at the same time.
Pardon me, ma'am?
Got a few questions around the table. Can you just wait and then take all of them?
I just wanted to clarify something things.
We'll get back to you.
May I clarify some points?
Let the counselors ask their questions so we can get them all at the same time.
I didn't hear that.
All right, we've got Councilor Thomas.
Mr. Jones, if you would, it seems that usually this comes to us in two stages. As I recollect, you're asking us to rezone, or the request is to rezone this property and to build the cell tower. Don't we usually get that as a separate request?
Yes, ma'am, you do.
If we approve this rezoning, does that approve the cell tower?
No, ma'am, it does not. In order for them to be considered under a special exception for a cell tower to go on this property, it has to be zoned correctly for that to happen. The RMF1 does not allow for a cell tower on that site. So they have to rezone the property to another classification. In this case, this residential office or RO zoning classification, in order to accommodate or even consider accommodating a cell tower at that point. At the next meeting that is scheduled for that special exception to come forward, in the event this council approves the rezoning, so they can be handled all in one day. But you're right, it is a two-step process here. The rezoning must come first, and then the special exception comes after that.
And as I read the material that was provided to us, the Planning Commission has a conditional approval. And as I read this, the condition is that it be restricted to the club or lodge, the banquet facility, and the communication facility.
Yes, ma'am.
Remind me, do those conditions stay with this property if it's sold?
Yes, ma'am.
It goes with the property?
They run concurrent with the property from here on out. So
Okay.
that no matter who owns the property.
If someone wishes to come in and do something other than a club, a banquet facility, or a cell tower, they have to rezone it again?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay. And I know that at some point, the cell towers, the property that is used for the cell tower is rented or leased to the phone company, to a phone company, or is that part of this consideration that you are aware of?
The lease itself is not a consideration of council. That is between the private parties themselves. We're only concerning ourselves here with the actual land use conversation more than anything else in terms of what the property can and cannot be used for.
Okay, so this is the first reading. You'll bring this back in 2 weeks for the second reading, at which time you will have the cell phone request?
We'll have the special exception to locate a cell tower on there at that time. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And of course, understand, please, too, and I think you do, that should the rezoning not pass, the special exception becomes a moot point.
Right. Thank you.
All right, we have Councilor Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question for the tower company, I guess, or whoever wants to answer that. Well, we've all heard the concerns expressed, and I think council is sensitive to that, what has been said. My questions revolve around the buffer that you're going to put around the tower, the type of tower, how tall it's going to be, and if there will be other companies co-locating on the tower. Also, I would like for you to think about some stealth tower that we've talked about over the years. I think when Mayor Portasheff was here, we talked about different ways towers can be designed so that they blend in better with the community. So if you could maybe address some of those points, I'd appreciate it.
We will absolutely address that right now. But as a prefatory remark, let me point out that we do have Mr. Dan East of the Shrine, and also highlight the fact that the city, the planners, the development are correct, because as of now, anything can go in. Should the Shrine decide to sell, and they're not, anything can go in, including a myriad of apartments. So what they have suggested will protect the citizens. And should you approve the special exception, the tower will not face the residents. Furthermore, I'd like to point out that we did have overtures years ago, I did, by the school district to build cell towers at Hardaway and Columbus High School and things like that. And the fact that we did not comply is because under the law, the school can only contract for 1 year. And those putting up cell towers and leasing it, for example, to the Shrine, they require at least 25 years in order for T-Mobile. And T-Mobile is going to be on this tower should you approve it. And so I just wanted to make sure that everybody is clear that what they're doing, what they're recommending, Mr. Jones and his people, Will Johnson, safeguard the people in that community. Because otherwise, anything and everything can go in should the Shrine decide to sell. And Councilor Allen, to answer your question, Colonel Throckmorton will do that.
Good morning. My name is John Throckmorton. I work for Municipal Communications. We're located at 3495 Piedmont Road in Atlanta, Georgia. And in the future, when we bring this special exception request, it will be for a monopole tower that's 150 feet. We can look at different stealth options when we bring the special exception request. The anchor tenant is going to be T-Mobile. It will be available for a total of 4 carriers. There are no towers within a mile of this tower. I know that as you extend outward, you will encounter more and more towers, but the carriers, when they ask us to find these sites, it's not a casual request on their part. I mean, they will put more than $1 million worth of equipment into this site, so they do it with the specific intention of covering the most amount of households, people, travelers. And the reason why we're at this location is the proximity of 185. It's a very densely built residential area. It is currently being used in an RO capacity, just based on the ordinance. There's a club facility there. It's not being used for an RMF1 use. So that's one of the reasons why we believe this will bring it into more of a conforming use for that. And when we talked with the planners, they said that, if it were to be purchased by a developer that wanted to build apartments there that could build up to 45 apartments. So it's a very small facility. It'll be about 2,500 square feet. On my screen, I can see it. I'm not sure if you can see the overlay on your screen, but it's on the west side of the facility, which does not face any residences. There's a very well-developed landscape buffer that's about 50 feet wide, and then another 100 or so feet until the next row of houses. So it's more than the tower height from the closest residence. And if there are any other questions, I can answer those as well.
What about the stealth tower?
Yeah, there are different options that we can do for a stealth tower, and we'll incorporate those into the next, when we bring it forward for the special exception. We have done tree towers in other places like Cobb County. We've done 3 towers actually that are tree towers. We can also do a thinner profile tower that's, we call it a flagpole design, so instead of having the arrays basically mounted on the external part of the tower, you can put those inside the tower, so there are different options that we can do that way. One thing I will say, though, is with a 150-foot monopole, which is what they need to get the optimal coverage out of this, if you do that as a tree tower, it does tend to draw more attention to the tower. We have found that, typically, because of the height of trees in Georgia, they're about 80 to 90 feet. So we will do tree towers in cases where we only need 120 or 125 feet. So that is a consideration, that it may actually aesthetically draw more attention to it. When we've already got sort of a pretty good landscape buffer there, it will go above those trees because those are about 80 or 90-foot trees. But it might tend to look more unusual if we did it as a tree tower, but we can present those options when we bring back the special exception request.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. And we have Mayor Pro Tem.
I was going to ask Mr. Jones, but since you're talking about 150 feet, how close is it to the first residential property?
We're approximately 200 feet from the closest residential property.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. And those are all the comments we had for now.
That's all the questions? Okay. Appreciate y'all being here. That item will be up for a vote then in 2 weeks at the 5:30 meeting, along with, we're assuming, a resolution for a special exception with various designs as a possibility. Okay. Thank y'all for being here.
The Mayor Pro Tem has a quick question.
I was just going to say, how can you have the special exception at the same time and the other one hadn't passed?
Well, it won't be voted on until you make a decision on the underlying zoning.
But the vote doesn't have to wait a week until after it's passed?
No, ma'am. It can come the same meeting, but it's just after the zoning vote.
Okay.
All right. The next and last item on our agenda, Mayor, is a resolution on Recorder's Court confirming the appointment of the Advisory Oversight Committee. It's ready for adoption.
Move approve.
Got a motion and second for approval. Is there any discussion on this item? All right, seeing none, you may record your votes electronically. And it passes.
Okay. That's all we had listed, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. We will move into public agenda then. Yes. Councilor Davis, is your light on? Okay. Hold on a second. There we go. Councilor Davis?
Mr. City Manager, if you would, for me, I wanted the city attorney's agenda to be over with, but just a similar situation just kind of reminded me of the matter with the cell tower. Would you have staff look into the tree cell tower over on River Road, off of River Road, and just look at it from a maintenance standpoint? I think we had an agreement with them to maintain that, and they've just, I don't think they've kept their end of the bargain. So could you have our folks look at it, please? Thank you.
All right. And that brings us to public agenda. So first we're going to call forward Ms. Cynthia Millsaps, who has a neighbor complaint. And if you would, just here at this podium, and if you would just state your name and address here. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Cynthia Millsaps, and I reside at 324 27th Street in Uptown Columbus. I provided you all with a letter that's going to entail the things that I've been going through since I've been living there for 17 years out of my neighbor, Mr. Radney, and his unsanitary living lifestyle. I have some pictures that that I tried to provide for you all so you could visually see yourself as to what I've been going through with the nephew that lives in the yard now. Mr. Radney, Mr. Charlie Radney, has unfortunately became ill and is not able to reside here anymore because the living conditions are unlivable. And has been for quite some time now. I've been back and forth with the city for years. And why it has taken this long, why I had to come here to see the mayor and the city councils, I don't know. Because I have done my due diligence. I have contacted codes and inspections. I've contacted everybody that I could possibly contact in reference to this residence and the issues that I've been having, like fecal and urine being thrown on the fence line. There has been no running water in this house for over 15 years. And they allowed Mr. Radney to stay there, live and thrive. 15 years. I own a small habitat house, and I'm the only habitat homeowner in this dead end. My upbringing consists of a military background, so unfortunately, I'm a clean person. I like to live sanitary, and I like to be clean, and I like for people around me to do the same. But for me to have dealt with this for 17 years is really not, considerable for me. You call CPD, the response time is too long. Ms. Woodson had the opportunity herself to witness this. I had a neighbor that was in a mental health crisis, and it was urgent. It took CPD 25 minutes to get to this area. Now, I understand that this is a low impoverished area. It's a high drug infested area, but the city of Columbus allowed Habitat to build homes in this area. They're looking to rezone my area soon. So now I've invested a lot of money into my home, and now only to be told that it's going to be rezoned. I have 2 years left to pay on my home, and I would like to spend those last 2 years or until you guys rezone in peace. Unfortunately, I have not gotten good results from Columbus Police Department or the city Codes and Inspections Department. Like I said, I've done my due diligence. I've done what I was supposed to do as a citizen, and I am now asking for you guys' help to assist me in this problem, and please bumping this house up on the demo list. Mr. Radney does not reside there. His nephew resides in the yard. If you can see there are tires here. He's built 3 makeshift sheds in the yard that not only is he residing, the nephew is residing in, but he is now inviting more homeless people and inebriating them to come and reside with him. The family has had more than enough opportunity and time to help with this situation if that's what they wanted to do. Now that Mr. Radney is ill, his daughter was supposed to take over the situation. However, she now has become ill. There are more family members. Like I said, this has been over 17 years. This is too long for me to have to live in this type of predicament, and I really need you all's help.
Thank you so much. We have heard your complaints and pulled together some information, so we're going to ask the head of inspections, John Hutchinson, to speak to the history here, what's going on and where we are. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Council. You should have a copy of a timeline that I put together since we've been dealing with this property back since 2007. There's been 7 different complaints. Every time the complaint received, we had one in July of 2007. The court date, he was issued a violation, and he went to court, and he was fined. There was another one back in January of 2011. We went back to inspect. Also, the violations were cleared. There was a date, August the 9th of 2012. This is the complaint that we received about the legal disposal of human waste. Now, if you see on the timeline, I kind of put the divisions, either with special enforcement or property maintenance. At that point, special enforcement and property maintenance were 2 separate departments, but we still received the same complaint. Both divisions went out there and did not see any response for the human waste. Human waste falls under immediate citation. So if we would have found anything, any odors, anything like that, that would have been an immediate citation on the spot. If we go to April the 4th of 2014, there was another complaint brought in, and at that point, by April 16th, it was re-inspected and the violation was cleared. On October 8th, also when we received the same complaint about the using the bathroom in the yard, our officer went out the same day, did not find anything, and there was no violation observed. October the 20th of 2017, we got the complaint from Ms. Millsap on the burn house and solid waste. Now, as of this time, special enforcement and property maintenance was in the same department. So now, when Officer Ziegler went out there on the 23rd, we moved it to a property maintenance case. We proceeded from there. Inspector Young went out to the site, verified that it was an unsafe condition and it needed to be demolished. We proceeded to send the demolition letter to Mr. Radney. Per the file we have, the file was also, he was also the owner at 334 27th Street. So when the letters responded, he did not come to the hearing. We continued to move forward with the demolition process. Back February 12, 2018, I received a complaint, and we went back out there to check that as well. And then that's when we cited the 10-day warning for weeds and for solid waste and junk vehicles. The letter was, you see there, when the letter was mailed out. We went out there on March the 8th of 2018. We issued a citation, and the court date is currently now for April 18th, 2018, which is next Wednesday. So we proceeded to go through the process. Anytime that a complaint has come through, either the citizen has complied with removing the waste. Like I said, unfortunately, he is a junk dealer, so he continues to bring things to the site, and every time it is brought there, we follow up with a citation. You have copies of all the work orders from the 311 system, from our system over at EnerGov, so you have all that at your disposal there. We're proceeding with the demolition process. We've cited him. We actually have a new address, kind of, you see that last date down there, April 6, 2018, which is good because now we know he doesn't reside at that residence. So therefore, when we decide to, if we continue to push forward with the demolition process, it's not, this is this person's only residence. Therefore, it can continue to move forward with the demolition process. One thing on the living there with without the utilities, that's a tricky situation, but ideally, if we know that the person doesn't have water, like I said, we try to contact the water company to find out what reason is, either is for non-payment, but that's not really for us to do. If that person continues to live in that situation and they're the sole owner of the property, it's, you know, if it's a renter situation, we can kind of get to the bottom of that. But if an owner, that person lives there and that's the owner of the property and continues to live in that situation, I previously talked to Councilor Henderson about working on an off-the-grid ordinance. So therefore, if you don't have active power or water or utilities, that we can do something else about that. And I've kind of been bouncing that with the city attorney, but we haven't finalized anything on that.
So, John, let me ask some questions because it looks, you know, it looks like a horrible situation when you look at these pictures. And so you don't have to have water or electricity by state law?
The way it works on the property maintenance rule, there's anything that I know in the ordinance, we can check with the city attorney, but anything that I've seen is that you have to have access to it. That means if the meter works, if you have plumbing in your house, but if you don't pay the bill and don't have a working utility system, there's nothing, I mean, there's no off-the-grid rule. So that's why I said we'd have to enact something here locally that we'd be able to do, which is more restrictive. So.
And why is it taking so long when obviously this went back even before I think you were an employee here, 2007. Why is it taking so long to get it on the demolition list?
Well, at that point, the degradation of the property. Like I said, all of these were written up as solid waste incidents. So these are the things that were on the site. Property maintenance and getting to the demolition, we started at, there was a conversation in 2012, which you have there, which we did go to the site, but if the owner themselves is currently living in the house, we demo a person's house and they don't have anywhere to live because that's their primary residence. So typically, we don't take that step until we know that that person is no longer there. So when we went about it in October of 17, that's when we started the process because we had another address that person wasn't living in that facility.
Okay. All right, we've got some questions. We have Counselor Woodson, excuse me.
City Attorney, I was talking to John because it looks like the process is going to start all over again because he doesn't live there. Is there any way, can you look and see if there's any legally way or how we can amend the ordinance that we can take the information that's been going on since 2007 and allow us to go ahead and condemn it without starting the process back? Because what John told me was because now the gentleman doesn't live there and he has another address, they have to start the process again. And the process it's very long because you got to give a person the right. Even though we don't like it, we have to. But I'm at the point where, because I've been there, I've seen it. I just found out about this in April, I think it was not too long ago. I found out, and the same day I found out, I went out there. And she's right. Councilmember Huff thought I was crazy going by myself, and he even came out there with me. And we were actually there, and we did see it. I have a concern and a problem that we would have to start the process again. Now, my understanding when we go to court, and John, correct me, my understanding, when we go to court on April the 18th at 9 a.m., if the judge cites them and tells them that they have to clean the property by a certain time period and they don't, then we would go in and take care of it. So we're going to come to a conclusion after we find out what happens in the court on the 18th, but even if they go clean it, we still have a structure that's unsafe there. So I don't know if you have the answer now or you can research it and come back, but if what John is telling me correctly, I'd like to see if we can amend the ordinance to be able to use the steps and the information that was done earlier to bring it up, and we don't have to start the process all over again.
Well, let me just say that you have to, depending on who the owner is, you have to cite the owner either by certified mail or personal service, but if the ownership is changed, that can create problems. If it is not, then you can cite for any violation each day it continues. Now,
no, let me interrupt you. It hasn't changed owners.
Okay.
The owner he kept saying that he lived there. We kept sending him information, but he never signed for it or got it.
Right.
Now we find out recently that he doesn't live there. I just found out this week that his nephew was living there. And I witnessed, and Councilor Huff witnessed, this young man in the middle of the road
Okay,
with some issues.
That was not the nephew.
That was not the nephew?
Opposite name.
Ma'am,
Okay.
the actual owner has to be served, but go ahead, John.
The part of the involuntary demolition process is we have to notify that person at whatever address they're at. So if they originally we had listed as the 334 27th Street was the owner's address. When we sent the certified letter and it came back, it's giving us another address now. And so therefore, we still have to give them a hearing date to notify them of what the address is, because they can come here the day we get ready to tear it down and say, no one told me, I didn't get any information, and they would not have any documentation or anything on certified letter to know that they got it.
Well, Clifton, I know we're not going to be able to come to a conclusion and settle it here.
No,
Let's go ahead and look to the request I'm asking you to, let's go back, look at the ordinance. Let's go see if there's something to do, because we can still give him his due process by informing him and letting him know, but I don't think we need to give him any more time, because we've given him time. And if the family members knew it was there, it isn't like he never knew about it. He knew. He just took the attempt to just close his eyes to put
Well,
it
there are
politically correct?
there are ways to get people personally served. If we need to look at other avenues, we can do that, and we can find a way to get him personally served.
Well, we're not going to, I don't think we're
Yeah.
going to have a problem now that we know his address. Let's talk this, I'd rather
Okay.
talk with you offline,
That's
and
fine.
because I don't think you're understanding what I'm saying. We know how we're going to get in touch with him. We already know where he's at. What I'm saying is I would like for us to be able to use this information to kind of speed up the process that we have to start over again. And in that, if I understood John correctly, and John, you and I can meet later, if I understood John correctly, the way our ordinance is, we can't do that. So I want to look at our ordinance to see what we can do to modify it.
Well,
I mean, we can. My intent was to bring the next demolition list May the 8th. I just know that's the next time I'm coming to council, and the due process between there, holding that hearing, and having that person have his say before that date won't happen. That's my concern. So, I mean,
Unless
we
we
can come
amend it.
back.
No, that-
I mean,
that's
we
the
could come
key.
back and
You
do it
can't-
as a separate one, just that one property after the 8th time. I mean, I'm fine with
Okay.
that. I mean,
Well, bring it
just,
back as
Okay.
a separate property. And let me
Correct.
ask you, is this gentleman in Columbus? Is he within the county, the jurisdiction of the county, in his new address you found?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, that should speed things
Yeah,
up somewhat.
and they
We
can
don't have
come
to deal
back
with a different
separately.
That's
But you
correct.
have-
We
you
just bring
have-
it back as a separate one, and it won't go through any different process. It's just whenever that hearing is held, then he's given that notice, it goes in the legal paper, we tell him we're coming to council, then we're here at council. It just won't be the May 8th one where we're bringing our bigger list.
Right, even if our ordinance was not in place, the state law requires that notice is the key. You have to give
Correct.
them that personal service of the notice for due process.
But there's no doubt in that. I
Right.
understand that process.
All right, we've got Counselor Thomas.
Mr. Hutchinson, this says that you're going to court on the 18th. You've been to court before, and the guy has been fined. Is that all that's going to happen on the 18th, that they're going to fine him
It depends
again?
if the material is cleared by that date. If it is, then typically the court can fine him, and like, you know, as city attorney said, he can fine him per day per violation. It's kind of on the court. That's why I'm waiting to see how the court proceeds, because then I'll know how to proceed.
The court cannot order him to clean it up?
They can.
They can?
Yes, ma'am.
And is that what we're going to argue when we get there? Is to
That's correct.
make him clean this thing
Yeah,
up?
you see the pictures, we have all the evidence we need. You know, he's a repeat offender. So that's why I said the fine will be stiffer, and to also give him the time when it's time for him, you know, give him whatever time frame needed to clear the property. Ideally, I'm trying to let that process take its course before we intercede, because typically we don't have owners that are in town or local that we can actually get a hold of to even issue a citation. So that I actually have somebody that's a physical person to give it to that can show up in court. I prefer them to do it first before the city has to incur that cost. Because then we will put the lien on the property for whatever the cost of that solid waste removal is.
Well, and I know that, that it's not unusual when we have a demolition case, that it takes a long time for it to go through the process. And I guess one of the things that I would request of you, that since this has been going on now for 11 years, since 2007 at least, don't wait 24 hours to take the next step. When that time is up, take the next step, and let's get this thing done and get it over and done with. There's no reason why Ms. Millsap should have to put up with this a day longer than absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the work that you've done so far, so keep it up.
And then one more point, Mayor, that what Councilor Woodson was getting to, any of the past acts on a chronology can be used as evidence of problems with this piece of property,
Yeah.
whether we go to court tomorrow or in a month. So you have a record that can be shown to the judge.
Well, let's push it as aggressively as we can, John. I mean, it's so frustrating, and yet Georgia law in particular protects property owners because they don't want their property to be taken by governments and demolished, particularly when people are living in them. And that's the reason why there's all these hurdles and all these protections about people getting notices. And then we see people that, either purposefully or just through happenstance or playing the system. And it makes it impossible sometimes for us to jump through all those hoops that Georgia law requires. But we appreciate your diligence, and let's stay on it. We've got Councilor Barnes.
Ma'am, I just apologize for something. I mean, this is horrendous to live next to something like that. And, you know, your statement is to the point, it's very apropos. Why does it take this long for the city to react to this unhealthy and unsanitary? Not only looking at the site of it, but it's unhealthy and unsanitary. And unfortunately, there are a number of other places in the city of Columbus here that are just like yours. Backyards where there's vermin, rodents. I know of a place where there's a school bus that's been sitting there in Sears Woods. A woman that's living in a house, and I brought it up before, she has not had water in that house for 10 years. This is ridiculous. And you go past the house, it's somewhat odoriferous. I mean, you can't miss it. You could be a blind person, and your olfactory will lead you to it. This is right here in it. Sears Woods is an area. Pools, and I know you're frustrated on Leary, Mr. and Mrs. Taylor, and I'd like to have a meeting. What I would like for us to do, Councilor Garrett kicked it off with that house that he had. I have been complaining, you know it.
Oh, yeah.
You and I walked,
yes.
and I showed you, we need to start doing something about these backyards, side yards, that his arms are tied. The Taylors are still living in that place. Something's going to happen. Next to Mr. and Mrs. Taylor, your frustration is that, where are we at with that? Is it the probate court? Do we have the person's, have we contacted the individual?
I personally have not, but I can.
Well, see, now the Taylors are still living next to that ramshackle place that not only the Taylors are complaining about, but the neighbors as well, you know. And it's unsanitary. That building's still leaning. What I would like to, and we can make this a referral, because I'm concerned not only with the conditions that you had to live next to, but there are a number of other areas just like that. I'd like to convene, if we need to convene counselors to get together with Clifton, so it can leave him somewhat unfettered in some of the things. You brought in the court system, maybe get some of the judges or something, to get them online, but citizens, you know, citizens should not have to live in conditions like this here. The second largest city in Georgia.
Yeah. Can we do a work session? Don't we have a work session coming up?
We need to do something.
Yeah. Whoops, I'm sorry. If we could do a work session, and John, also, are you calling the Horizons Mental Health, adult mental health?
That's an issue too.
I mean, because they have intervention, we do that sometimes with the police department, but you can call and coordinate with them. I know that Drill has done it when we have hoarding of cats and dogs and things like that, or other pets, and somebody has a mental health issue, we contact New Horizons and get them involved to help us.
That would be another avenue.
But anyway, Mr. City Manager, you were going to say?
Well, we do have a work session on May 29th. And we've got an internal codes enforcement task force of staff that I really want to get with the Inspections and Codes Director to bring it to that group and kind of let us think through it. And I've got to find out from the city attorney, you know, if we have the ability locally to create stronger laws that will allow us to act more swiftly, or are we governed by state laws that talks about due process and what you can and cannot do, and that's why our hands are tied, and we're going through all of this.
We'll look at that again, but I can tell you, I'm sure there's a day time limit in the state law, whether it's 30 or 45 days, I don't know, but we'll look at it again, but we recommend that you give at least that minimum time that's in the state law.
Well, and that's why I bring that up, because I think we have limits. Our power is limited, but we want to do everything that we can do while staying within state law. I mean, I agree with you. This is ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
And, but they are doing all that they can do.
And I'm not pointing fingers. Listen, I'm not pointing fingers. The only thing I'm saying, let's come up. We have a saying in the military, the maximum effective range of an excuse is 0 meters. Not saying that you're making excuses, but we need to come up with something. If we need to get everybody together, Clifton, someone legal, New Horizons, citizens should not. I wouldn't want to live next to that. You wouldn't. No. We shouldn't have any citizen, and there are other citizens. No, this is no consolation to you, but believe me, we here, I'm not only myself, Councilor Garrett had someone and they came down. We need to find out if we can get Clifton, you, get together and come up with a plan.
Yeah.
We need to come up with a plan and find out what we can do, what we can't do, who we need to appeal to, do we need to do A, B, C, rather than have citizens live next to something like that that's not only unsightly. I know you couldn't invite anyone to your home, no relatives from out of town. They would think something was the matter with you. But it's also unhealthy and unsanitary.
Yeah, and I agree, Councilor.
And I know everybody here, everyone here is in agreement to what I'm saying.
Oh, absolutely.
What I'm saying, what the frustrating thing is, I'm just used to the military realizing there's a situation, brainstorming and coming up with a solution. I think that we're on a treadmill and we need to start moving forward and assisting the departments, and we need to bring everybody together because he can't do it on his own.
Well, and I can assure you that we'll come together and we're going to do everything. If I could just make a firm decision and go out there and do it tomorrow, we'd be out there getting it done.
And I realize that, Mr. City Manager.
And so we'll come together and we'll do all that we can do within our local powers and authority. And then we need to work beyond that on state legislation.
Bingo. Yes.
That would provide us, more powers. But there again, and we'll include the judges.
Yes.
Because, when you've got someone operating like this and you've got a maximum fine of $1,000 and they go in there and you give them 10 days to clean it up and they do enough to get by, and then if they don't, they get fined $100.
Right, yeah, right.
I mean, I'd pay you the $100 and keep doing what I'm doing, and then we got to start all over again.
That's exactly right.
So we've got to have strong enforcement in the courtroom.
Yes.
And so we will.
We need to bring, that's what I'm saying, we need to get everyone to include the judges.
Yes.
But we need to come up with something, Mr. City Manager, viable.
Yeah.
And we need to know what's the extent that and then if we can't, then we need to appeal to our legislative delegation, we need to do that.
Yeah.
But we need to, for the sake of the citizens, we're looking at, 2007?
Yeah.
This is horrendous.
So I'm with you.
And I know you are.
Yeah.
And, John, would you look at your schedule, because I do want to arrange a meeting with you, the Taylors, and there's another house that has been lingering for years. Very odoriferous, very unhealthy in my district, and we're going round and round like this here. So I appreciate if you could just give me a ring and let me know what dates and times would be amenable to your schedule, so I can contact Mr. and Mrs. Taylor, so we can all sit down and maybe come up with something where it can assist you in dealing with that owner. So thank you, and thank you for all that you do. This is not pointing fingers, this is just frustration right now.
And like I know it frustrates you, let me tell you what frustrates me when you call me and with photos and I send them out there.
And I send you photos all the time.
And then they come back and tell me they can't enforce this and they can't enforce that. I sent you out there.
Yeah.
And you're telling me you can't enforce it, and that's what they're telling me.
Clifton, let's do this. Let's get the most aggressive law that a locality can possibly pass under state law. I want to see a draft of an off-the-grid provision. I want to see a draft of an aesthetic provision. If we get overturned because, John's out there deciding what is and is not outdoor fabric, then we'll just have to deal with that. But I think we've got to do the most, we have another situation where we've got somebody, and I don't know if there's mental illness involved, you just never know, but they've got their clothes are on hangers outside their house.
Yep.
That should, but it doesn't fall into the definition that we have, so our guys have to go out there and say, yep, those clothes shouldn't be out there, but that does not fall into the definition. So it's ridiculous, and they wouldn't allow it in Sandy Springs, they wouldn't allow it in Dunwoody, they wouldn't allow it in Jones Creek or Johns Creek or whatever.
There we go.
And so we're not going to allow it here. So get us the most aggressive ordinance, and if council wants to strike some things, and then they can strike some
Now
things.
we're cooking. That's what I'm talking about. We just need to
But
get
that's what it's
started.
going to be. And then what's going to happen is, but we know that, first time you go out and ticket somebody who's got a really nice outdoor furniture set that didn't pay for the outdoor fabric, is going to be here complaining about the fact we fined them $1,000 for a $900 outdoor picnic set.
But Mayor, that's when we need to, when they do that, because a lot of times it does, they are somewhat in a nebulous situation where they have to make a judgment call. But when someone starts yelling and screaming, we just need to have the chutzpah enough to back them and say, well, yeah, that might be the case, but you need to clean this up. That puts teeth, we need to start putting some teeth into the, and we're starting now with knowing we're going to get the judges, finding out what we can do as a municipality, what we can't do, petitioning our legislative delegation. We need to get more clout, but we need to be doing something for the sake of the citizens that we work for. And I appreciate that we're having this discussion.
Okay, we've got Councilor Woodson.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to see everybody excited about this issue because it's an issue that's not only in this area but throughout our city. I also like to add to it that staff did the best they could with what they had. Now you have someone who's leading the force and it's coming to us with innovative ways, which is Mr. John Hudson. I can tell you that when I found out about Ms. Cynthia's problem, we attacked it immediately. There was no second chance. And Isaiah, I send you pictures at 3 o'clock in the morning, 5 in the morning. I did the same thing to poor John. Matter of fact, I'm still giving John some from other areas that I've seen. We went immediately once Lindsay, thank you to Lindsay, brought it to my attention because Ms. Cynthia brought it to her. That same day, within hours, John was out there, another inspector was out there, I was out there, Councilman Huff was out there, the police department was out there. So she then saw that, yes, it's a long process, and she called people, but she was calling people that were limited of what they can do. Once she understood with the system, how it worked, she was able to get the things that she's going through there. Once she was encouraged to come before us and to give it so, because like you said, Councilman Warren, sometimes one person can't do it. It takes several people to see it, envision. And I can tell you, when I went out there, and Councilman Huff can tell you, it was not a pretty sight whatsoever. And the gentleman that was standing in the road, it really concerned me because with all the violence and things going on now, you don't know what can happen. And unfortunately, the states have cut out a lot of the mental health hospitals and things, and that's why we're dealing with these issues and concerns. And it makes it very difficult because while we want to help the person, if the person doesn't want to help himself or the family doesn't want to get involved, the citizens are the ones affected by it. And so I agree with you, Pops, and everyone, to bring everyone together, but I would also like us to look at, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and the mayor and I were having a sidebar over here. We had a presentation of a program that I feel very strong about it, and I feel that it would help us deal with this because our employees are already stretched out. to continue to give them more. But the presentation that was given to us, it was a land bank authority, and we would have to just hire one individual to start, but that person will work with the department so it wouldn't be so stressful. That will be completely focused. So I think that with what you're recommending, and if we would all come in consensus to this land bank, I think that we can take our city to another level, and we can be that city that can show other communities how it's done with that simple thing. But at the same time, in saying that, I need, like Miss Cynthia, she agreed with me, I need people to understand, or we need people to understand, let me put it that way, that they need to come forward too, and stand up and don't be afraid, because they don't always have to give their name. They can call one of us and we can call it in, and in the books it has our name, not that constituent's name. Because as you go throughout this community, there's so many empty, abandoned houses, but no one's picked up the phone and called 311. Don't wait till it gets so bad. 311 has a rule, and they can pull it up. John did it in a meeting that I had. People were saying, hey, I called 311, nobody did nothing. We looked it up, and we never had one call. People need to utilize that 311. They have a rule. They have to react within 72 hours. It gets all logged in, just like now. If it didn't all get logged in, we wouldn't see this. We wouldn't have this to be able to help John do his job. And so in saying that, I hope that we can add that to Isaiah, to kind of look at that land bank authority, because I could tell you I'm in favor of it completely. And I'm pretty sure that that will help John and everyone else that's involved in cases like this. But I want Miss Cynthia to know, and I want this council to know, that John, the minute he saw it, he started reacting. And Councilor Thomas, I can assure you John won't let this go, because the response he was giving to me and the time he was giving, even late at night he was calling me and saying, Miss Mimi, I already went over there. I know she told me you've been over there, So it shows his dedication to his job and to this community. So I want us to all know that he does react when it comes to it. And John, publicly, I'm sorry I'm killing your phone, but I know it's easier. And thank you. And Ms. Cynthia, thank you for bringing it to my attention, as you can see.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. John, I wanted to ask you about the timeline. Once we go through the demolition process, will that remove the folks from being able to live on that property and the tents and type?
Yeah, once we go to do the demolition, it's a clean slate. We take it all down, we resodded any accessory structure, all of it's gone. So literally the only thing that'll be left is.
But I was just trying to, part of our letter talks about the other things, the other activities that are going on there that she's having to put up with. After we demolish the house, will that remove them from the property?
Correct, yeah, because at that point I know that that's not the owner's primary residence, so that's why I said once it's cleared, a lien is put against the property, and then we can continue to monitor if any illegal dumping happens after that point. It's the same kind of thing. Now at that point, we'll continue to put the lien on that owner. We may not be able to cite a person because nobody's physically living at the house or hanging around the house because there's not a house there anymore. They may just be illegal dumping. Then we will just contract it out to get it removed.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. City Manager, you've probably already thought about it, but would you add the waterworks to the group that you're talking about?
And Georgia Power.
Yeah. Well, and they're telling me we have Housing Authority, Health Department, but we'll add the waterworks and anyone else.
But it seems like when they turn the water off at a residence, there should be some notification to the city or to maybe the group Mimi's talking about to kind of put it on our radar so that we know there's no water there, there should be nobody living there, and then that would maybe could communicate with John so his folks know they can keep an eye on it. I know it's maybe after the water's off for a year.
Or long,
yeah, something like that, whatever time period you feel is appropriate.
Yeah, well, and that would be good to have someone in the waterworks because we can give them all of the properties that we need feedback from them on. So I think that's good. And let me just say, Madam Mayor, and to the council, I mean, I really appreciate the conversation, and I'm sure the staff appreciates it as well. You can imagine, when you look at this timeline, how much time and energy and how frustrated they must be going back and forth out there and chasing down property owners who are hiding and won't answer the door. And I wish, as we talk about this, that, when you call on someone to come to your house, typically they charge you a service fee or service call. All of these trips, when we make 3 trips or after the 3rd trip, we need to be looking at how we can make them pay. It's when you have 3 false burglar alarms come from your house, we start charging you for the call. And so if we come out and we deal with you a certain number of times, it appears to me we need to start adding liens to the property or something, that because we can't spend day in and day out every week chasing down people, and then we got to go back and administratively document it so that we'll have a record. I mean, that's just a bit much for staff. So I'm glad we're having the conversation, and maybe we can get a lot of good out of it.
All right, we've got Councilor Pugh.
I was going to ask, once we put it on the demolition list, that property is theoretically ours, right?
No.
We never own the property. The lien is, the demolition, involuntary demolition is considered a nuisance. We're abating the nuisance, and then we put a lien on the property.
Yeah. Now, we could do, if we had a more aggressive land bank authority, and I fully support Councilor Woodson's suggestion and think that we should have done that long ago, but we certainly should be doing it now. We could move for in-rim foreclosure because of the liens we have on it, and the land bank authority can move much more quickly than we can as a city alone. And that's why jurisdictions around the state are using land bank authority so effectively. But no, we won't own it just because we demolish it. We'll probably have a lien on the property.
That's correct.
And the problem, Madam Mayor, with the liens is the lien might be on the property for 30, 40 years, and because they're not doing anything with the property, and often you'll find that the liens exceed the value of the property. We may have a property that's valued at $5,000, but the lien on it is $15,000.
Well, and that's why the land bank authority is
Absolutely.
so critically important. And so we need to get off of, I know we've been, and we're like all jurisdictions who thought, well, what's a land bank authority really? And I don't know how we feel about it. And so we sort of put our toe in the water. It's time to dive in and take advantage of what land bank, it's been 15, 20 years people have been using land bank authorities. We need to get her done.
I was just trying to find for us to have a better way to keep individuals off of that property once the deed has been put on it.
Yeah, correct. Once we own it, then therefore it would be a situation where it would be trespassing. We could call and do things like that. But if they're the owner of the property, typically they're, we can do
I don't know if we'll let people camp. We'll have to see about temporary structures. I'm not sure about that. Okay, Councilor Garrett.
As you all know, I've been working on this, and we actually, since this last ordinance passed, and we could not enforce against the 2 properties in my district that are really bad, I looked into it, and the closest thing I could find to what we're talking about, but it is very restrictive. Gwinnett County has a quality of life department. And what I've seen is they've got different things that could address, like I know several of you, this one's not in my district, but there's like a residential development, and he's having an issue with graffiti nearby his property because there's a neighbor who's trying to distract people from purchasing things. Graffiti is addressed in there. Now, where they are overly restrictive, which could be a concern, is that they do not allow anything outside of your property, which would take care of the tarps. It would take care of the clothes and all that type stuff. And when I sent to the Assistant City Attorney, that's something we're going to have to address in a work session for constitutionality purposes, because while they may have it, it may not have been challenged, just because we're probably going to have things like, if it's waterproof, it could be out there. But Gwinnett County is kind of the baseline from what I've seen as far as extremely restrictive. And we might as well start there because they've already got it all in place. The other thing that I like about what they do, while we're doing a lien and we're doing some fines, sometimes I look through through here, the packet we got regarding this current case, and, $50 is not much. It's not much of a deterrent, and some of the people that are hoarders actually have financial means to pay these fines. I know one of them where I went on a ride-along, it was actually, apparently the person has money, but their property maintenance violations are subject to a minimum $250 fine up to $1,000, but it's on a continuing basis. So if they, like this, I mean, they'd owe hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially, because it's per day, it's not $250 per occurrence. So if they continue to go on, it's going to keep adding up. And then, of course, with the Land Bank Authority, we may have the option of, doing something else there, because it probably will exceed the value of the property at some point.
Yeah. All right, Councilor Barnes?
I'm glad that you brought up the Land Bank Authority. And Mayor, let us keep in mind that New Horizons, because mental illness
Yeah, it's a lot of
plays a lot, and I'm glad that you brought it up. But Justin, when did we have that meeting months ago about, before the young lady even came down and did a presentation? Yeah, months ago, we met with the lady that made the presentation.
Yes.
Months ago, prior to her presentation, she was talking about the powers that you can get and things that you can get through the Land Bank Authority. So that was a really good meeting that we had, and we need to be moving forward with that.
Well, thank you very much. Ms. Millsap, I appreciate you coming, and hopefully you have some solace that things will be moving along here soon. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mayor, and
Appreciate it.
City Manager and
Great.
I appreciate you
This is
all.
unbelievable.
Thank you. You bet. Thank you. Sorry it's come to this, but hopefully it will move along now. All right, we've got Ms. Audrey Holston-Palmore, who would like to speak to us about requesting a meeting. Good evening, or well, not quite afternoon, morning still. If you would state your name and address, please.
Yes, could you please start after I pass out my forms, or do I pass them out? Okay.
They'll get it for you there. Okay, there you go.
I wanted to make sure everyone gets the form first.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, now we'll start.
Okay, I am Audrey Holston-Palmore, a resident of Columbus, Georgia. And once again, I feel it's necessary to come before council to speak to the Public Safety Director in regards to a very important meeting that I think needs to be scheduled by the Public Safety Director for the purpose of sharing information concerning a police report that I've brought before the city, before the mayor since December 2017. And the notes read today.
You need to go to the mic, ma'am. You need to do the mic.
Okay. Thank you. The note is saying Tuesday, April 10th, 2018, from the desk of Audrey Holston-Palmore to the Public Safety Director of Columbus, Georgia. Please write to me using the USPS system and inform me when I may have an opportunity to meet with you in your office this month. My address is 1035 Lawyers Lane, Columbus, Georgia, 31906. Thank you for your attention. Signed, Audrey Holston-Palmore. Mrs. Teresa Tomlinson, Public Safety Director of Columbus, Georgia, Consolidated Government. As a citizen of Columbus, Georgia, who puts forth an effort to be a law-abiding person, I think the act of presenting written communication to you is a positive step to positive results needed. I am presenting information perceived by me and my family members as an injustice of humane treatment. We are pursuing rights to pursue happiness, success, and peaceful contentment. The past responses revealed by you following my monologue requesting a meeting with you and the composer of police report case report number 170132-1-001 are regarded by me as mental clutter. I am of the thought of you are employing diversionary tactics to address my bona fide search for understanding of the police report presented as evidence by a member of the law system of Columbus Police Department protecting the citizenry of Columbus, Georgia. Since December of 2017, at the public forum platform held at East Columbus Middle School, where a session promoting Talking to You, the Mayor of Columbus, was being held, I still have a serious, unrelenting drive and goal of meeting with you in a timely manner. I must emphasize the fact of my position to be afforded the opportunity to face the composer of the police report presented. I am aware of the legal terms, statute of limitation, and due process, which the court honors. If you don't see the necessity or the sense of my approach of speaking to council members at which you are positioned as the public safety director to be viable, I differ with you. I will move forward with the freedom and the right I have to do a picketing demonstration publicly at the Columbus Government Center where your office is located. I do not intend to fall into the game of statute of limitations of my concern being faced with the statute of limitations being enforced. I believe that justification feels differently from what I am presently thriving through. Thank you for your attention. I deserve it as a citizen of the city of Columbus, Georgia. My proper humane treatment will enhance proper mental health regulations afforded by your arrangement of my desired meeting with you. I've asked for 5 times as of this letter date. Please make an effort to communicate to the contents of this letter. Please use the service of the United States Postal Service for the delivery. My address is still the following: Mrs. Audrey Holston Palmore, 1035 Lawyers Lane, Columbus, Georgia, 31906. I am not providing any information to you for an establishment of verbal communication. I am looking forward to talking with you under the conditions of the composer of the police report being in the meeting room designated by you. It is signed by Audrey Holston Palmore, and I have copies to be sent to the city manager, Mr. Isaiah Hughley, the council members that are active of Columbus, Georgia, and the Attorney General of Georgia presently serving. Okay, I'm very concerned about why I have not heard from you. I understand that this is a process that I have to go through in order to get a meeting with you, but the public safety director should be aware of the fact that a police report has been filed, and I, as the citizen who wants to understand the involvement of the police officer in protecting me as a citizen of Columbus, Georgia, and I want him to be present at the meeting that I will hope will happen this month.
Is that it, Ms. Melvin?
Yes, if there are any questions from anyone, I'm willing to answer the questions that they may possibly have.
Sure. Okay. Well, thank you for coming. I know that you do come fairly regularly, and as you know, and I know you said it sounds like mental clutter, and I'm sorry for that, but we have met several times over the years on this very subject, and you've met with the police department several times on this very subject, and as we've told you through all those years of meetings, that police report exists because an incident happened and it chronicles the incident. If there was an objection to the incident or a defense to the incident, then that had to be taken up in court. We can't do away with, eliminate, delete a police report. It exists. And any complaint you had about what occurred during the arrest, again, had to be taken up in court. And so in a way, you're trying to get blood from a turnip. We can't destroy a public record. We can't help you on this. And of course, the public agenda is already always open to our citizens, but I just wanted to make that clear that that's been the history, that we have met over the years on many occasions, but we simply cannot afford the particular relief that you're requesting. So I'm sorry for that.
I would like the chance to speak about what you just said. There was no arrest. There was the call from me to the proper authorities to ask that the police come to a certain location for my protection. You are saying that there was an arrest. There was no arrest. The officer came and I read the report, and the report does not give an understanding from me of what the officer wrote. So there was no, we have not been to court about this issue. And that's where the mental clutter that you are dispensing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thinking, because you continuously say that there was an arrest. There was no arrest.
Okay.
Okay. So what you're
yes, ma'am. Your time has expired, and I know. I appreciate it, and I appreciate our differences on it. But thank you. We've heard from you. We appreciate it. I know. I know. I know. And you're
not offering the public clarity.
Sure.
You're telling the public is not correct.
Okay. All right.
Okay? So that's why. What am I supposed to do when you, as the public safety director?
Yes, ma'am.
You're misleading.
Ma'am, your time has expired. Okay. I know. And so we're going to have to ask you. And I've said my piece, and you've said your piece. So we're going to have to ask you to step back from the microphone because we have to carry on with our agenda. Thank you. All right, that concludes public agenda, and we're moving on now to the city manager's agenda, and we're going to call forward. We have some visitors. We have a special proclamation that we want to present. We've got some folks here from the U.S. Softball League. We have Chris Sebrin and Cody Warren, and we also have representatives from our Sports Council, and we're going to present the proclamation first, and then we're going to have a special presentation. Hold on. All right. Welcome. Thank you for your patience. We appreciate you all being here since early this morning. We're going to read this proclamation, and it states, whereas in 1933, USA Softball was founded as the Amateur Softball Association by Leo Fisher and Michael J. Polly. Fisher and Polly laid the foundations for softball's future by adopting a universal set of rules, setting the stage for what would become softball's national governing body. And whereas USA Softball was named the national governing body of softball in the United States by the United States Olympic Committee in 1978. And whereas U.S. Softball provides people of all ages the opportunity to play the game they love at a variety of levels, USA Softball offers a recreational league, tournament, and national championship play for fast pitch, slow pitch, and modified pitch, and annually conducts over 100 national championships. And whereas U.S. Softball is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, which means the goal is not to make a profit. Every dollar generated from grassroots softball goes directly back to improving and furthering the sport. And whereas the USA Softball National Office is located in Oklahoma City and has 69 local associations that register teams and organize leagues around the country. And whereas USA Softball registers over 150,000 softball teams comprising over 2 million players and annually registers over 80,000 youth girls fast pitch softball teams comprising over 1.2 million girls. And whereas USA Softball established the ACE, Achieve, Certify, Educate, coaching education program to provide softball coaches of all levels, from beginning coaches to experienced veterans, an opportunity to become educated with a national softball organization. And whereas the USA Softball completes over 80,000 background checks a year on coaches and personnel who surround our game because we care about the athlete's safety, and protecting our athletes and environment is our top priority. And whereas USA Softball annually registers over 25,000 certified umpires and is the only softball association to offer complete training and biannual umpire-in-chief clinics to help umpires achieve their goals and promote a positive experience for athletes and coaches. Now therefore, I, Teresa Pike Tomlinson, Mayor of Columbus, Georgia, do hereby proclaim Tuesday, April 10th, 2018 as USA Softball Day. Let's give them a round of applause for all their hard work. Again, thank you so much for your patience today. Mary, if you want to come forward and say a few words. I know you've got a presentation, but you've got some folks perhaps you want to introduce.
We do, and we're excited to tell you today we have a huge opportunity before us to host the International Cup next year in Columbus at our South Common Softball Complex. So our USA Softball representatives are here in Columbus. They were here yesterday and got to experience the complex, but they'll be with us today as well as we tour around Columbus. But we're excited to have them to showcase the city in hopes of bringing this International Cup to Columbus. With us today we have Chris Sebrin with the National Office. This is Chris.
Hi, Chris.
Cody Warren, who's also with the National Office. Al DeTola is our Georgia USA Softball Commissioner, and our Junior Olympic State Commissioner is Ernie Yarbrough with us today. Also, we have our Chair of the Board, Kim Sheik. He will come up and speak just briefly to you, and then you can ask any questions that you might have.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Good morning, Council. Thank you for your kind words. Mayor, Mary asked me just to speak very briefly, and I promise it will be very brief, that we acknowledge how important this event is to our city. This is an immediate need in front of us. We see this as part of a broader picture. However, Parks and Rec has done a fantastic job of putting together a facilities assessment across Columbus. We don't want to lose sight of that bigger picture as we prepare to, we hope, host this very prestigious softball event next year. We do believe there's a much bigger picture that we have to prepare for. And my pledge to you is that as the Sports Council, we're entering into a process of hiring a private consultant to guide us through this process and hopefully lead us towards a much bigger private-public fundraising campaign to get our facilities up to par, to retain the events that we have, and to attract other events that are so good for our city. And so I just wanted to thank this body. There'll be more to come in the future as we plow our way through this process and hopefully do it right with a very comprehensive plan for the good of our city. So thank you.
Thank you, Kim, so much. Now, do you all have a presentation today, or are you coming back at another time?
No, ma'am, that'll be for another day. This event has just recently come to our attention, and so we're going to tackle this head on, but it's also going to be part of a broader plan as we move forward over the next.
So to prepare council for that information, as I understand it, we're in the hunt to host this particular event, and that in order to do so, we must meet certain standards. We must provide certain quality of facilities in order to be eligible for that.
That's correct.
And so you're going to provide us with a list of updates and things that must be done for us to be eligible for as the host.
That's correct. And hopefully we're not just coming with a problem. Hopefully we're coming with somewhat of a solution as well at that point. But we're going to meet this need because we've just got to for our community.
Well, we like to compete and we like to win, so we look forward to seeing the list of how we can provide an extraordinary facility and remain competitive to get these softball tournaments here in Columbus, Georgia. So we look forward to seeing you back here soon.
Thank you.
We've got Councilor Huff has some comments.
Thank you all for being here. Sports Council, Parks and Rec, they do a fine job. And we thank all the participants for taking a good look at our city. It's a great city. Softball is big. King, queen of the city at times. So take a good look, and as we go, let us know what we need to do. Because I think based on the 96 Olympics, I had a chance to work in the background leading up to that point. And I had a chance to understand how the city comes together to make things happen way back then. So I think we can do it again and have such a prestigious International Cup held here in Columbus. Thank you.
Thank you. Our intent, if I forgot to mention this, is we're already coordinating with, obviously, the city with the city manager's office. Been very helpful. We're also including CVB, Parks and Rec, many partners in this process to make sure we're all rowing in the same direction.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure we're not missing anything, because we have y'all down, Mary, we have you down to make this presentation today. So again, you don't, if you're not ready or don't want to, that's fine. If you want to do the proclamation, send them about their way, since they've been here for 3 hours, that's fine. But you're down to give a presentation. I don't want to cut you loose.
And also keep in mind, when we came before you, and I think it was December, we had a consultant that came in and kind of gave us a priority list with our sports tourism venues. And so we've done that with Parks and Recreation. We have in hand their full assessment of our facilities and the things that are going to be needed over time to keep them competitive so that we can retain and continue to recruit new events here. But keep in mind, we also, with that presentation, we will be hosting in 2020 the Olympic team. They'll be coming in here for a visit as well. So part of the presentation today was to let you know of this great opportunity and also the challenge that we may have ahead of us to try to raise the funds to bring our facility up to speed so that we can host the 2019 International Cup.
Okay. Well, just, the sooner you get it to us, the sooner we can start working on it. So let's have Councilor Thomas.
If you will, Mary, can you give us just some ballpark figures of what this would mean to our economy if we had an event like this come into Columbus? I know it means heads and beds and those kinds of things, but do you have any ballpark figures?
We don't know the total number of teams that will be coming here just yet internationally. We are looking at the possibility of maybe 6 teams, but also pairing it with a youth championship experience to bring teams in to compete while this event is also going on. So we have the 8 fields down there. What we're looking at currently is maybe 3 fields being utilized for the International Cup and the remaining 5 for a youth tournament. And so the economic impact is not estimated at this time, just not to state anything.
And it would be over a period of a week?
A week. They would be here right now tentatively the first week in July. So it would be a week-long festivities, different ideas to try to, bring back maybe some of the former players that played here in '96, because we're all attached to those. But we want to make sure our young groups that are coming up now and playing now have the same attachment to South Commons as we all have. They weren't born when we hosted the '96 Olympics. They don't have that tie to our facility that we all have. They don't get that feeling when they walk in the gate that we all get, because we remember and we know what was played there at that complex. And so typically in a year span, about $5 million in estimated impact is generated from the softball complex. So that can give you an idea over a year. But looking at a week-long with international teams with this youth event, it could be extremely beneficial for the city.
And I would hope that as part of your planning and so forth, that you involve the softball teams at our high schools. I know that several of our high schools have softball teams, and they need to be in that mix and get them as excited as everyone else. Thank you so much for what you're doing for our city.
And we host the state softball championships every year, and we have a representative that's actually here as well that represents the high school association.
Good,
so
good deal.
We're excited.
All right, we've got Councilor Davis. Wait a minute. Hold on. There you go.
I just want to say thank you so much to USA Softball. All the people coordinated with girls softball, women's softball. It's just amazing. I've had the opportunity over the years to spend some time with these young athletes, and they're just wonderful. They're just super young people, just full of spirit, and vibrancy, but they're so polite and hospitable, and they come here and they're so respectful, and we really appreciate that, and that stands out to me a lot. But I hope we can wow you guys and continue to do that. I'm a big fan of the one-stop shop. I love that. I mean, we've got a couple facilities here. Actually, we've got several facilities where we can do that, crossing over into different sports venues. But it always amazes me of these young girls. I watch them. I'm a student and a fan of the mechanics of hitting, but I watch these young athletes, these young girls play softball, and their mechanics are just so incredible. I wish I could teach the guys that. I don't know what it is, Bruce. You know what I'm talking about. Guys tend to struggle. We struggle with mechanics, but for some reason the girls get it. The softball players get it. They just look so, just like machines out there, incredibly fine-tuned machines out there. But I'm amazed at what they can do at such a short distance and hitting that ball and how it moves and all. Stand there. If you don't think it's quite a challenge, just stand up there at the plate one day and face one of the pitchers. You get a little different perspective of it. But they're good athletes. But more importantly, we've got something good in our community, and we know it. And we need to just make sure it's where it needs to be and kept up the standards. Everybody's trying to compete with us. We know that, but we still have a great venue here, and I think we're going to. Public-private partnerships will do whatever it takes to, like I said, wow you guys and to keep you coming back, because it's just, it's always been a tradition, a heritage here in Columbus, Georgia. Softball has always been big. Everybody knows when you talk about softball, you talk about Columbus, Georgia. So I can't say enough to thank you all for choosing us and being our partners in the Sports Council, for developing the relationships and working together. And so we want you to know we value those relationships.
Great. All right. Well, thank you. I hope you all know how much, obviously, we care about this particular opportunity. And so we look forward to hearing more from you. Councilor.
Madam Mayor, I was just going to thank the group. Mary Sherman from Sports Council, she's got her chair here, and then let me tell you how important this is. I did the walkthrough with Cody and Chris yesterday, and it does have tremendous economic impact. I'm excited about it, and we're going to work to do what we need to do to get the softball stadium and our field, our complex, to their expectation, that we can make sure that we not only get them here, but make them want to come back. So I enjoyed the walkthrough with them yesterday, and we look forward to doing business with you.
All right, thank you. Will you all come around, let us shake your hand, congratulate you, but also to meet a few of you all.
Appreciate it. Thanks for coming. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Takeaways here? Thank you, Steve. Thank you so much for what you do. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, Mr. City Manager, we're still in your agenda.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. We've already handled number 6 on my agenda, and we're going to start from the top with the Whitesville Walk variance request, and this is at 1312 Woodville Court. It has to do with Lot 15C. And let me just say, Mayor and Council, that in our UDO, Section 783H, it requires the developer to provide a cul-de-sac for a dead-end street where the logical extension of the street is terminated due to lack of future access to adjoining property. The development was approved with a note that a temporary turnaround would be required. The 2012 Fire Code requires a turnaround for any access road in excess of 150 feet. And so approval of the lot without a turnaround would be in violation of the Fire Code. It would also require ambulances, garbage trucks, and other larger vehicles to reverse down the street or use private driveways to turn around. And so engineering has consulted with various departments, the fire department and public works, and they oppose the variance request. Council recently approved an ordinance, number 18-4, providing council authority to grant variances to this section of the design standards for streets. And so in consulting with staff, they are requesting that this variance request be denied. And so that is where we are today. And I know that there are some members from Fire EMS here, and I don't know, the city attorney may have some comment on if it's approved, what you might need to do if you approve it. And so that is where we are from the design standards for streets, because of what it would require us to do in terms of getting our emergency vehicles and other vehicles down that street. And so the request is that it be denied, and City Attorney, you may have a comment on an approval.
I have a comment with respect to the denial, which has been distributed around the table. There's a draft, and in this situation, we would recommend that you follow the recommendation of your staff, and that is to deny the variance. So, but that's your legislation. You can make a motion to deny. If you make a motion to deny, yes. That would be this resolution.
Is the petitioner here?
Around the table.
And we've got several counselors. We've got Councilor Allen.
I just wanted to see if the petitioner wanted to have be allowed to comment.
Okay. Yes, sir.
My name is James McVeigh. I'm with Leary & Brown Incorporated. We own this lot in this subdivision. I'd like to distribute, if I could, some Google Earth photos that much better explain the situation. Much easier to see kind of what we're doing and why we're here. In 2006, we jointly developed the subdivision with the plats being approved in February of 2007. At that time, we constructed all the roads in the subdivision, including the end of Woodville Court. We submitted plats on 3 different occasions showing this lot as it is platted today, and they've all been approved by planning and engineering. All the plats have been signed and approved. I have copies of those. We have engaged Moonmeek's engineers to try to come up with a resolution that would suffice the UDO, and it's simply not feasible from an economic or a logistical standpoint to get a resolution. As you'll see, there's already a home constructed on lot 14 on Woodville Court. So any emergency vehicles already have to turn down the street to service lot 14. All we're asking is to be able to build on lot 15. Our driveway will be approximately 30 feet past this existing driveway. The variance request is a little bit misleading in that we're not asking to plat or develop this lot. This lot's already platted and developed. I actually have a building permit to build a house on lot 15. It was issued by building department last year to build the house in the exact location that it's shown on this plat. In consulting with Donna Newman and what have you, they had some issues with the UDO with emergency turnaround access, and so we halted that permit. We did not proceed with building the home. As I understand it, or I have been told by the building department, we could proceed to build a home on this lot as it is platted today. Our issue is we can't. Our attorney has told us we cannot get a buyer cannot get a mortgage on this property because the city does not take deed to the street. Has not taken deed to the street. So what we're really asking is to deed the right-of-way, the remaining street, to the city and replat this lot so that it looks like every other lot on this street. The UDO, this subdivision was developed and approved along the time frame that the UDO was just coming into effect. I don't know if it was right before or right after, but it was either one of the last ones before or the first ones after the UDO was enacted. So it may have been some issues there. I was not involved in the development side of this subdivision when it came up, but all the roads were constructed at the same time. We're not asking to build any more roads. All of our infrastructure is here for this lot. The street, the curb and gutter, sewer, water, power. It looks just like any other residential lot out there. There's actually a fire hydrant that serves this area on the back of lot 12 that you see, lot 12D. The very back there is a fire hydrant there that serves, that would serve all of these homes in case of a fire. There's a water main easement there you see. All the infrastructure was put in when we developed this lot. And so we've held this lot for many years. We've replatted it a couple of times. I'm not going to get into all the details of why this was done unless you want to know. I'll be glad to tell you the reasoning behind this, and Councilor Davis was very involved at that time. But we've paid property taxes on this lot since it was recorded in 2012. We've paid taxes on this lot as if it's a buildable lot. and it is the last lot in the subdivision, and we're asking to be able to construct a home and finish up this subdivision. I understand where engineering is coming from on the emergency egress, but they already have to turn down Woodville Court to serve 2 other homes there. And so another 20 to 30 feet to serve 1 more residence is not a huge burden on them. We're not asking to build any more road or anything else. We're just asking to basically to replat this lot and deed the right-of-way to the city so that we can finish up this subdivision. I'm not...
Review those elements of the agreement that remain unfulfilled. I have no idea what's going on. Okay, I'm very sorry.
I'm not real sure which street they're saying is in excess of 150 feet. I don't have clarification on that. I don't know if they measure that from the Woodville Court, from that intersection there. But as you can see, we've got basically 89 or 90 feet and 60 feet to the end of that road. That would be 150 feet. So if they're measuring it from Woodville Drive to the end of that street, we're very, very close to 150 feet if that's where they're measuring. Our driveway would be less than 150 feet from there. So we're glad to answer any questions.
There are questions. Do you own that property across the street? Could you bow out the street and create a...
That's part of Lot 12D. We do not own that.
Okay.
And one of the scenarios drawn up was to do something there, but you can't go back to a mortgage company that basically has a lien on that property and replat somebody's property, and plus having to purchase the property and what have you. We've only got 1 lot left. The expense of building that curb and gutter and trying to buy property, it just doesn't make economic or logistical sense to do that.
Okay, we've got Councilor Thomas.
I guess with the engineering department, is the only issue the turnaround for emergency vehicles and the garbage trucks and so forth? Is that the only issue?
Yes, ma'am. Or any other vehicle that went down there, they would likely use an individual resident's driveway to turn around in, and I can see where that might create some concerns and complaints as well.
And what about the same vehicle that would be servicing Lot 14? Do they not have that same problem? Where do they turn around now?
Well, the difference is in the code section. When we originally developed this subdivision in 2007, the discussion was to extend it onto the adjoining property, and at that time, I guess there were discussions with the adjoining property owner about purchasing it and extend
what?
The adjoining property. It's owned by someone else. Where this road currently dead ends, it's owned by someone else.
Then the greenery there is owned by somebody else.
Yes.
Okay. So originally they were talking about
discussion.
perhaps purchasing that,
Yes,
right? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And now that is not an option.
From my understanding and from the conversations we've had, that is not an option. I think the son now owns the property, and he's no longer interested in doing that in the near future.
And is not interested in selling somebody enough property to build a cul-de-sac.
He would have to address that.
Mr. Thomas, we would like to purchase that property. We have had some very preliminary discussions with Mr. Stinson on that, but I can't sit up here today and warrant to you that we will purchase it. We are going to try. He's got there's some issues there that do not allow us to do that today. If we could, we would, but I can't tell you it's going to happen. I can tell you we're going to try to make it happen. But it would be a minimum of 12 months before we could acquire that property. I do know that.
And had they built this house before we changed the UDO, it would have gone through? Is that right?
Ma'am, that's always pretty much been a requirement as far as having a cul-de-sac, or at least a temporary turnaround if the intent is to extend a street. But the rule is always, or up until the UDO, was like one lot deep. And the way that this developed was in 2007, Lot 15 was actually part of Lot 12, and it wasn't platted. And then they came back in 2000, I believe it was 10, and extended Woodfield another direction, and it was still included as part of Lot 12. And then I think in 2012 is when it was replatted, and 15 was subdivided out of Lot 12. And that's when it got missed, because by that time the streets were in place. And it was just a replat of a lot versus a street acceptance where engineering would have looked at it a little closer.
Okay.
Does that make sense? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it makes sense, but it's troubling.
We did not extend Woodville Court. We have not built any additional road since 2006 in the subdivision. We've platted it differently, but we have not constructed any more road or curb and gutter since 2006, and it was improved in 2007. I can get into the legal matters of why we did what we did if you want to know that, but I mean,
I'm not sure.
It would bore you, but there was a method to the madness. I can tell you that. And Councilor Davis was involved when we did the rezoning here back in 2005 and 6. And there, like I say, there was a method to the madness of what we did, but there was never any road added here. It was just the way the lots were platted.
Okay. All right, we have Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. McVeigh is right. I remember this development very well, and you know, the one thing that I appreciate today and even back then was the developer was willing to work with us at his extra cost. I mean, it was on his dime. They put a lot of extra money into this development because we had concern about traffic back then going into Whitesville Walk. And so they went in, they put a roundabout in. If you go out there, they put in D-cell, X-cell lanes. They didn't have to do that, but they did that. The council asked them to do that. But also the city asked them to do a lot more, and which Mr. McVeigh is referring to, which they did exactly that, whatever they were requested. I mean, it was requested here because possibly, we do this all the time, that possibly one day these roads are going to continue, so they take the roads. They were asked to take the road all the way up to the property line, and since then it's changed. I think the council remembers, the city manager referred to it about Councilor Henderson making a change in the ordinance to meet request. Like today before us, we have this variance request, and to do exactly that. If you remember, before Councilor Henderson resigned for obvious reasons, he talked to us about this very subject of this proposed use of the lot here. Ms. City Attorney, I think you just spoke. I think the city manager asked you to talk about the acceptance of this or the approval.
I'm going to have to find out some info.
I think the city manager asked you to talk about the approval of this process, if there was anything. I would like to hear your comments on that. You did speak to denial, but I think he asked you about the approval side of it. I do have to agree with the developer on what he stated as far as public safety matters, sanitation pickup, things like that. You're talking about another 30 feet, which is, it's got to be the same approach, the same exit, as if there was not a house there. Another thing to remember is this developer is paying taxes on this lot and has been paying taxes on it for several years. I think probably over 5, 6 years or longer. on this lot, so it's just sitting there and he can't use it, and that's, you know, I think that's definitely a concern that I have. But Ms. City Attorney, I'm going to let you go ahead and.
Here are the standards that have to be met for this variance. A finding of good and sufficient cause, a determination that failure to grant the variance would result in exceptional hardship, a finding that council has received or reviewed the recommendations of the Department of Engineering, Department of Planning, Public Works, Police Department, and Fire and EMS concerning the variance request, and a determination by the council that the granting of a variance will not interfere with the provision of city services along the impacted streets and inhibit the access of public safety vehicles into the affected area, result in extraordinary public expense, or otherwise threaten the safety of the public. So those are the factors that you must consider on a grant of this type of a variance.
Well, I'm glad you read that, because what I just heard you say, I believe it meets all those requirements. I'm going to make a motion to approve this request, and normally, you know, and I appreciate our staff and all who are involved in this matter, and we do have a UDO for a reason, but we also have a process in case there is a situation that comes up that's unique. Is unique in the circumstances, and you know, we're not talking about much here as far as hindrances or anything like that. This development was done long before the UDO came in. We've asked this developer to do far more than normally what would exceed their requirements of what they would want to do. And I do remember what it took to get that entranceway in. And now you got another challenge here that is causing a similar type of situation. I think this is a very valid request from a variance standpoint. Councilor Henderson spoke eloquently about this and made some good points. You know, on the same side, I'm going to support our staff and all as far as the UDO goes and as far as requirements and all, but I think through this process, this is exactly why we're here, that this is a valid request. So I'm going to make a motion that we approve this and allow this developer to go ahead and develop on this last remaining lot under the circumstances.
I'm second, yeah, I'll second.
All right, we've got a motion and second. We have Councilor Thomas.
Mayor,
hold on. Here we go.
Mayor, I'd like to hear from the fire department, since they're here, what this says that the fire department does not agree with this, and I'd like for you guys to talk about it for us. Thank you.
Yeah, Deputy Chief Greg Lane. I spoke with Donna Newman yesterday. I think the email was sent to Chief Shores a while back. As far as going in there and being able to fight a fire, we can do that. There's no issue with that. However, she asked us whether anything on the books that regulated, you know, the length of the roadway, which the only thing we can go by is the 2012 International Fire Code, which states anything in excess of 150 feet, you got to have some kind of turnaround. But to sit here and tell you, is it an issue for us to fight fire? No, it's not. But the code does state if it's in excess of 150 foot, you do have to have a turnaround. But like I said, we'll do that.
So if there's not a turnaround, Chief, are you saying the trucks can get in and maneuver as they need to?
Right. The first initial truck coming in would have to come in and lay hose off and go ahead and progress on, you know, attacking the fire. And then another truck that's coming in, if they hadn't brought their own line in, would have to come in and catch a hydrant and pull hose in and connect to that truck. So, I mean, it's going to be a bottleneck situation, you know, due to that situation right in there where it's a dead end at. So, I mean, it is, I mean, we can work around it, but, I mean, I do want you to know, I mean, that would be a situation as far as firefighting.
And your opposition then is because the code says you have to have a turnaround?
Yes, ma'am. It's just, I'm going to strictly stay with the code. I mean, it just says anything in excess of 150 foot.
Okay.
I don't know what the length of the roadway is, so, I mean.
Well, it's a gray area. It depends on how you measure it. That's what I just asked Donna. I mean, if you measure it from the curb, it's 148 feet. If you measure it from the center line of the street, it's probably 158 feet to the very end of the road. So it's not 150 feet to our driveway. If you look at these two property lines, 89, 82, and 58, 74, I mean, that's less than 150 feet. So if you measure it from that corner, it's 150 feet. If you measure from the center of Woodville Drive, it's probably 160 feet. But it's less than 150 to the driveway and to the house.
Yeah.
It's right in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, you measure 150 feet.
All right, and let's see, Councilor Huff.
Don't equal 150 feet. But the driveway's right here.
Come, there we go. To the fire department, when they finish, yeah.
It won't be when we redeed the street.
Yeah, to the fire department, question. How do you turn around?
I'm sorry, I'm that question for me, I'm sorry.
No, for the fire department.
In a situation like that, sir, we'd have to back out.
Back out?
Yes, sir. That's what
So
we'd have to do right
everyone
now.
coming into that area would have to back out? I mean, the fire trucks, the garbage trucks, moving vans?
Yes, sir. Because, I mean, where those two houses would be at, I mean, that, of course, they're going to have to pull down, so the only way they can get out would be to back up.
Okay, let me ask Director Newman, is that why they put the cul-de-sac in Dawson Estates, in Mayor Pro Tem's neighborhood, at the end of Royal Street?
Correct.
Because I lived there for 16 years. It was a dead-end street, and when they decided to do some other things there, they made them put in a cul-de-sac.
Correct. Typically, it's at a minimum, if it's intended to extend a subdivision, they'll do a temporary turnaround, which is on a smaller scale and typically made of gravel. But if it's a dead-end permanent situation, then it's typically an asphalt cul-de-sac, so that any vehicle, especially the larger ones, can get in and turn around. And we did ask them originally, when we first started this discussion, to look at doing even a modified turnaround. And there's different ways you can do that in a Y or a hammerhead. We asked them to look at something like that, but his concern was because of the development on Lot 12 and the infrastructure that was already in place, and then just the added cost as well.
And Madam Mayor, if I may.
Hold on. Up until now, would there have been room to back and turn around at Lot 15? For a fire engine or somebody down that street? How are they getting in and out now? I mean,
They have to go to Lot 14, they have to pull down there and back out.
I'm saying, are they able to use Lot 15 right now to back into and come out?
Yes. More or less they could, yes.
And we don't need to construct any more road. I mean, where you see the driveway on the proposed house, that's where it would be, maybe even closer to the lot line.
The issue with the driveway is that's, even though it's an easement, if you will, across public property, the driveway is the responsibility of a property owner.
Right, that's my concern.
Right, so
because if you back into the driveway and the driveway cracks,
and
it's
you
on the
damage
property
it, they're
owner.
going to come to the city
Right.
saying, you're allowing them to use this as a turnaround. I
Right.
want you to repair my driveway.
Right. And it's
We
been done.
would be willing to put up any signage necessary, to appease engineering or planning. We could put up any signage necessary. No more people are going, you're going to maybe have 2 more cars a day go down that street, and they're going to be the people that live on Lot 15. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, I get the traffic flow. I'm just saying that the garbage truck should be a weekly occurrence, getting in and out. So they will have to, come down the street, pick up, and then back all the way out from Woodville Court back to Woodville Drive?
Just like they have to do on lot 14 right now. So it'd be an additional 20 or 30 feet. Well, most people put it in the driveway.
Here, if they go here, they go on the private property. If the garbage truck now goes into the private property,
Yeah.
we would have to
Okay.
back out already.
Okay. So let me ask a question. If approved today, what do we need to do, Director Newman? What do we need to do going forward so we don't get in this situation again? Because I don't, I understand from the discussion that there's been meetings, some things have been talked about, you spent a lot of money, and you've done your due diligence. I get that. But going forward, this should really never, we should never be in this situation again.
Well,
with anyone, because I've seen the results of what we're getting ready to do. And then I've seen the results of the cul-de-sac. So to be fair with you, I get what we're trying to do. But I just want to make a note of it today, that going forward, we need to make sure this doesn't happen again. There's no way I can approve this past today, because you should be able to go into the future and make it happen with a cul-de-sac.
Well, and Councilor Huff, you know, I think that, yeah, I wrestle with this because, you know, when I look at it, you know, I'm trying to apply common sense, and it tells me you should be able to do this, you know. But then on the other hand, like with fire EMS, you know, I think they are saying we can back in and we can put out a fire, but the code says this, and they can't tell us that it's okay when the code says something different, because, you know, we don't know, and we hope that nothing ever happens. Yeah, and I agree, I think it's doable, but I think staff, they can't tell you, because if there's a life-death situation and lawyers are involved, I hate to say it, they're going to go and pull the code. And they're going to say, you should never have allowed this. And that's why I was asking the city attorney the question, what is it that we can do to justify it? And without you, and I think he indicated, you need to document something to justify it so that it's in the record. Because if you don't, and the law that you passed, the UDO is the law, it's an ordinance, says you can't do it, and then the fire codes say you can't do it, and Public Works is saying I can't back down, and if it back down and run back over somebody, you shouldn't have been doing it. And so I'm wrestling with all of that, but I'm saying we can do it, but we need to cross our fingers and hope nothing happens. And so I was just looking for, if you do this, this, and this, then, and it's documented that we didn't just haphazardly, you didn't approve it, you approved it with an understanding that there's a way to handle this. And then, of course, you know, if you do this one and then someone's out there watching and they come back next week and they say to you, you know, I got a situation like this in Dawson Estate.
Right.
And you did it last week, you know, but when I look at it, I'm like, we need to figure out how to do it. I'm just not there yet. So that was my dilemma in dealing with all of this. And if staff, more than one department is telling you no, and I come forward and say, or direct them, you're going to do it, and then something happens, and they're sitting back saying, well, we told him you shouldn't do it, but you did it anyway. So that's where I am. I'd love to be able to figure it out.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Mr. City Manager?
Go ahead.
Yes. And I hear what you're saying on the legal side of it. I think it's a gray area on what is considered 150 feet of street. I mean, I think that's not defined, and you know, when you look at from that curve to the end of that street, it's less than 150 feet, and I could come in here and replat this lot, cut 10 feet of street off, and serve what you want. I'm not trying to do a workaround, I'm trying to make this work for everybody. But if the 150 feet is the issue, we can work around that. And that's kind of what I'm hearing you saying, is from a legal side, somebody says, if Greg says it's got to be 150 feet, and it's 152, well, we can make it 149. But is that the right, are we working to the same end? I don't know. We're just trying to get a solution here, but that's the gray area there.
Well, and I hear you, and if you could do what you just explained, and that helps us to say it's okay, then it's okay, because that lot is sitting there, and I mean, it looks like you can build on it, and
it's a perfectly good lot. It looks like any other lot in the subdivision when you ride down the street.
But from a staff standpoint, we just got to be, I've got to be able to say to you that we don't hear from someone 15 years from now when they go back and look at the law that you just ignored it. And that's where, so and maybe we should, I don't mind taking another look at it. If you got some ideas about how to make it work, I mean, let's make it work.
Yeah.
Well, if you got some ideas, I mean, I don't know.
Well,
I don't always agree with them.
Yeah. We do have some ideas. What we don't have is any more land to go put in a turnaround. We just, as we sit here today talking, we have no more usable land to go build a turnaround.
Yeah,
if we can acquire that property, I can promise you the first thing we'll do is go put in a temporary turnaround. But I can't warrant that to this council today that we're going to buy that property.
The consensus right now seems like everyone up here wants to help you. My concern is going forward.
I don't think you'll have as big a problem going forward. I'm in the building development business. This doesn't happen anymore because of the UDO. This was all done before the UDO, so you've got a mechanism in place today to stop that. And I have not seen this happen since 2006.
Everything in the UDO will catch this going forward, and every development will have a cul-de-sac at the end of the street.
Councilor Huff, I'm not going to sit here and
no, I'm not
place blame on anybody, but there was enough mistakes made in this thing.
No, I'm not. This is directed to Director Newman. Yeah. That the UDO going forward on developments, this will not occur ever again. You'll have a cul-de-sac where we need to have one.
I can't say it will never occur again, because the problem is plans are developed and approved as a unit. And then the actual construction and acceptance is done in sections.
Right, but I'm saying,
So,
where do we go as far as?
Ideally, yes. We will make sure if it goes
Yeah, but
a smidge beyond an intersection, they're going to put in a temporary turnaround.
What I want to know is how we go forward with developments, and the fire trucks, the garbage trucks have a place to go and come out.
We're going to ensure that, and it's going to cost the development community a lot of money, more than likely, if they continue to develop similar to this.
Yeah, I mean, I see it happening in certain parts of town, but not all parts.
Well, typically what they did, and they still do in some cases, is they'll go a little beyond the intersection so that they have the road in place to tie to, and they don't have to come all the way into the intersection to extend a street. So what we will have to do is, if they do that, at the end of that, regardless of what plan has been approved, if they're doing it in a section, they're going to have a temporary turnaround or a cul-de-sac.
I mean, I see this is existing. Goes back, but I'm just saying, starting today.
It's the same premises.
Yeah, I'm saying starting
They
today.
still do that today. They'll do a master plan and get it approved. And it'll show full streets connecting, so forth and so on, but then they come back and they develop it in sections.
There's nothing we have to.
And so we will have to keep this from happening again.
Right.
If they want a portion of Woodville Court, let's just say they just wanted to go to that first driveway of Lot 12, we'll have to make sure that they put in a temporary turnaround or a cul-de-sac.
Right. That's what I'm after.
To keep it from happening. That's the only option that we have, and that's going to cost them a lot of money unnecessarily.
So what do we do as a body? We just rely on the UDO as it is now?
Well, we have been relying on the UDO.
Yeah.
But that's the only way to preclude it from happening again, because we're not in control necessarily of how they want the city to accept those sections of the subdivision. Even though, because what happens is with the slower development, when they plat it, they then have to pay taxes on individual lots versus leaving it in large tracts.
Okay.
So that's my concern. But that's the only way to ensure that this kind of thing never happens again, is to make sure if they're platting any portion of a road, that there's a cul-de-sac or a temporary turnaround at the end of it.
Okay. Well, we'll move on and help you today, but I'll call you. We'll meet, because I want to make sure there's something in place going forward, that if I come forward and I'm a developer and I buy land, that's understood from day one with my plans, that if I turn this corner, there has to be a way to get out, because it makes the city's growing. And for the fire department and public works and all have to go down and back up the street is ridiculous. Okay, thanks.
All right, we've got the Mayor Pro Tem.
I guess to engineering and the fire department. And he says that it's a gray area as far as measurement, but there should be some defined measurement point in the code.
Is there a defined origin measuring point?
It's not in the fire code. I've looked at that and there's not. So it depends on, if you're looking at the plat, the line that you see with the 148 is the right-of-way. That is not the physical road. If you measure from the curb line, again, it depends on where you pick up that point. If you're
but I just find it very difficult for the fire code not to say that it's measured from the center point of such and such to the curve of such and such, because we have had enough years of the measurements on where you go around the building to get back to the front. And I don't understand how a national fire code could not have a way of telling you how to measure something.
Well, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, is it possible with you guys that we could delay it? Yes. And I'd like to find that measuring point and talk with Mr. McVeigh and staff. And I mean, it sounds like he has an idea, and I don't know that. Because I'm just telling you, I'd like to do it, but I
like to do it too, but I don't like for us to be on record as voting for something when we have been told by staff that the National Fire Code says ABC, and we're going to do D.
Well, let us delay it until the next meeting, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
I mean, if it's okay, I guess, with council.
Okay. All right, we've got Councilor Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. That's what I was going to offer, was to delay it and let us sit down and we'll talk about it.
Figure it out.
Because we're already in a tough situation because our city vehicles are having to service Lot 14.
Yeah.
And
it's tough.
What are they doing now? Are they taking a right on Woodville Court and backing down to 14? Or are they going down there and using the driveway?
Yeah.
It may be an option that on Lot 15, you may want to somehow enhance the driveway so it'll withstand, be a little more durable with the heavy equipment that'll be utilizing it, and that may be an option. I don't know that there. Sounds like you have some ideas to. So I would make a motion to delay.
I'll second it.
Okay, that's a motion and second delay. We have Councilor Davis.
Say I'll agree to that. I'll withdraw my motion. But you know what? Really, when you think about this, one day it's probably going to be a non-issue. I mean, the road originally, we asked the developers to put it in because they believed. We do this all the time with developments. Mm-hmm. They believe that the road's going to continue through in the future. I know the UDO, like I said, I support that 100%, but this is kind of unique.
Yeah.
Kind of unique, and you know, if that house wasn't so close and it was the same circumstances for fire and EMS and sanitation, You're talking about 30 more feet, you got a fire hydrant right there that most likely, if there is a fire, they're going to hook up to that one anyway. It's very unique circumstances that meets, like the city attorney said, meets all the requirements for an approval. We've got that process in place where the council can deal with the requirements of the UDO. That's why the variance is there, and so I don't mind doing that at all, Mr. City Manager. I think that's a good way to try to find a more palatable solution for everybody. And if the developer's okay with that, I don't see any reason not to be, but
we're fine with it. My only question would be, is the biggest issue for council the 150 feet in the fire code? Is that the angle we need to be working a solution from?
Well, go ahead, Mr.
I was going to say that's one of the first things I want to get the measurements, because I mean we may get the measurements and it's a moot point.
But we need to know
it may be that we have the 150 feet. Once I don't know, but.
I need to make a motion.
Okay, now we've got a motion and a second to delay it, and Council Davis has withdrawn his motion. All those in favor of the delay, please state aye. Any opposed? Okay. All right, thank you. I hope you all can come up with a satisfactory solution.
Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah.
You're on. Clifton, you were on. Now you turned yourself off. Yeah, there we go.
We will take the resolution draft for approval and add the 4 findings to the resolution and give it back to the city manager for the next council meeting, because these 4 findings, if it is approved, they need to be in the resolution and in the record. So we'll take care of that and give the city manager a new copy.
Well, and that was my point. Let's get it in the record so that if it comes up later, it was justified. We justified it. So with that, Madam Mayor, I'll move on to the lease agreement, which is 685 Front Avenue, Historic Columbus. They're wanting to lease the Chattahoochee Promenade.
Got a motion and second to approve. Is there any discussion related to this item? Seeing none, you may record your votes electronically. And it passes.
Got alley abandonment. It's a quick claim. All parties agree.
Got a motion and second for approval. I see no discussion on this matter. You may record your votes electronically.
Got 4 and 5 are both.
It's inconclusive at this time. I need, is there one? Okay, now there's 6. Is there one more? 2, 4, 6, 7. Okay, there we go. All right.
4 and 5 are both street acceptances.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve items 4 and 5, both street acceptances, one Woodland Creek Court and the other Pine Seed Court. I see no discussion. All those, it was Councilor Allen with the first motion, and then the Mayor Pro Tem with the second. And you may record your votes electronically. It passes.
I've got a temporary use or special event permit extension to extend existing.
We've got a motion and second for a temporary use or special event permit extension for Star South Steaks. I see no discussion. You may record your votes electronically. And it passes. Yes.
The stakes. Is there a date, I mean, is there a time at which we can no longer extend that? I'm thinking if this is a business, is there not any requirement that they have a permanent location? I mean, I don't have a problem in extending it, but can it be extended time after time after time?
Go ahead.
The way the ordinance is written, it is 3 times, if you do it individual times, it's 3 times per calendar year. So if they choose the next year to come back and do the same thing, the internal limitation is the 10 days. They're asking for an extension beyond the 10 days, which requires council approval, but it's 3 times. It's different qualifications, but it typically falls on the calendar year. So if they do this again, they can only do it 2 more times during this calendar year of 2018. So when they come back in 2019, it's the same thing. We have to review their documents, with everything they get from the Department of Health, and all that still has to be reviewed again for them that next year to do the same thing.
So this is the first time this calendar year?
This is technically the second, because the first one has already been approved because they're currently out there, and they're asking for an extension beyond the 10 days, so this is the second time. So if they do it, they will only be allowed to do it a 3rd time this year, and that'll be it.
Great, thank you. That's what I needed.
Okay. On the purchases, I've got repair and refinishing counter workstations at the Muscogee County Jail. It's $23,625. Asking your approval.
All right, let's see, we've got items A through M. Do any of those need to be pulled? Let me read them. The city manager's read A. B is cubicles and chairs for recorder's court. C is batteries for 911 center, uninterruptible power supply. D is 65 FT bucket truck. E is maintenance, repair, and operational supplies, industrial supplies, and so forth. F is the Chevrolet Tahoe police pursuit vehicle pursuant to a Georgia statewide contract. G is the Ford Fusion's pursuant to statewide contract. H is Ford F-150's statewide contract. I is for F-150 with additional options. J is computer and informational technology equipment. K is NetApp storage. L is Microsoft software licensing update. M is repair services for the Fort Benning Gateway fountain at I-185. There being no discussion, I think we can do these electronically. Can't we, Bruce? Yes, they can be done electronically. Yeah, very good. All right, and it passes. Okay.
Madam Mayor, on N and council, let me tell you what I am requesting today. I am requesting your approval to move forward in the following way. I'm asking you to approve the $107,605.21 to allow for the environmental archaeological studies only today, is what I'm asking for. So you would not be approving moving forward with the bridge that we've been discussing. And what I'm proposing to you is that the staff will work on concept designs that we will bring back for your final approval. These concept designs that we would bring back may be the replica as we've been discussing, or it could be another type of bridge structure that is different from what we've been discussing. It might be a structure that is not a bridge at all, just to make the final connection to the Riverwalk.
Okay, that's a motion that the archaeological study be done, I guess pursuant to city manager's recommendations,
And-
that the design come back?
And if I may,
Sure.
Mayor, and so what I'm saying is that the mayor and council will have final approval of the Mott's Green structure, whatever that's going to be, of what I've just outlined. And this will ensure that we will have a Mott's Green project, and that final project, whether it's going to be a replica of what we've talked about or another bridge or not a bridge at all but just a connection, and so the final project is to be determined. without your approval of the environmental archaeological study, the Mott's Green project obviously will not move forward because that is required. The other studies that we've already done, more than a year old, will not be accepted. Therefore, I'm requesting that we be allowed to move forward with the understanding that the bridge or another structure will be further designed, and that design will be brought back to receive approval of the mayor and council. But I do want to stress that, if you approve moving forward with some structure or whatever it's going to be at a later date, there are a number of things that will be a part of the project, if agreeable with this project, that need to be done, and those things would be the project would renovate and refurbish the last section of the Riverwalk, obviously. 2 large brick monuments would be cleaned and repaired, because that needs to be done. Existing monument lighting would be replaced with efficient LED lighting. Landscaping to be refurbished or replaced with damaged planters being repaired. Handrails would be replaced. Settled brick and concrete areas would be removed, repaired, and replaced, and signage would be replaced in considering whatever structure there's going to be there. So what we're talking about today is the environmental archaeological study. We have $800,000 of federal state money, and we've already committed $200,000. This $107,605.21 is a part of the $200,000 match that we've already agreed to. And so we're not talking about new money at all. We already committed to $200,000 to match the $800,000, and we're saying $107,000 of our $200,000 would go for this archaeological study. We're not talking about new money. We're just having to do a study. We were going to have to do a $200,000 match, and that's where it's going to come from. And so we would ensure that we secure the funding that has already been approved, the $800,000. We would ensure that there's going to be a Mott's Green project, but the exact project is to be determined, and you'll decide when we bring it back to the various concepts that you'll get to pick and choose or decide what you want to do. So okay. I'm asking for approval, Madam Mayor.
Great. We've got Councilor Allen.
Has the archaeological study already occurred?
No, it hasn't. No.
I guess I'm fuzzy on why, if it's longer than a year, we need to go back and do another one. What else are you going to find there?
That's what we said. You know, I mean, we don't agree with it, but if it's their money and we want it, we just.
Well, it's our money.
Well, no, I'm saying $800,000.
Matt, do you?
I know, but
we have someone here. We have a representative of the archaeology study. I don't know. Do you know why it has to be why our other ones aren't good enough?
Madam Mayor, do we have a second for that motion?
No, we didn't. Not yet.
Hey, I'm Matt McDaniel. I'm a planner and architectural historian with Calyx Engineers, and we're helping do some of the environmental studies and the archaeological studies and the architectural history. Calyx Engineers here in Columbus. We do environmental management for GDOT projects very frequently. Basically, whenever there's a GDOT project that has federal funding, there are a lot of different federal laws that have to be complied with, and GDOT has a very specific and precise process and documentation standard for those projects that you have to comply with, whether it's a small project or a large project, and it has to be for every single discrete project. So even though we've had a lot of activity down in that area, GDOT isn't going to accept all of those prior studies because this one is a separate study. It has its own GDOT PI number. So basically, we have been able to use some of the prior studies by reference, by mentioning them, and in fact, the archaeological scope has been minimized because we've been able to use some of the prior studies that occurred for whitewater and such. But they're very focused on the potential impacts that this very precise project will have, so that they request specific reports for this very project. We can't just use, say, prior documentation. Again, we can include some of that by reference, but we can't just take that report and hand it to them and they be satisfied with it. And they've made that very clear. I think the staff as well.
Well, I understand what you're saying, and I disagree with their approach, but I just, some people have said there may be an $800,000 grant, but the city can save $200,000 if we don't do this. I mean, you can utilize the monies in other areas in another way. I mean, I'm having a really hard time with this, and I'm getting a lot of calls that are concerned about this. Let me dig down a little further, if you don't mind. Your company works with DOT?
We're a private firm, but we do this sort of consulting work for DOT on a regular basis, yes.
Okay, are you contracted with them to do this work?
I'm contracted, yes, correct.
With them specifically, or with somebody else?
Oh, I'm sorry, with Heck Shop. I'm sorry.
Heck Shop to provide that.
Okay. Are you getting a part of the fee from them doing the work?
Coordination fee.
Can you come up to the mic?
Neil Clark with Heck Shaw Architects. We're the architect for this project. And, you know, I sit on the same side of the table as you guys in that I hate that we're having to spend this money. We did everything we could to try to not let that happen. We made every case we could to GDOT and the Federal Highway that the size of this project is so small, and the other projects in that area that have already studied this multiple times in the past should be enough that we didn't have to study it one more time. But we made it. We made that case to everybody that we could. Nobody would accept that, and we were told time and time again, this study is going to happen. Get on with it.
Okay, can you answer my question?
Didn't I answer your question?
You did. Answer the question, but he's looking for the fee. What you said over there, but you didn't say it
do
to
I
the
get a part of
microphone.
the fee? Yes, I get a coordination fee.
Okay, how much is that?
$24,000.
To oversee his study?
To oversee his
So
study.
part of 107 is 24 to your firm to oversee his study?
That's right, to oversee his study, to attend the meetings, to coordinate with GDOT. It's a complicated process that has been going on since last September.
It's complicated, yep, I agree with you. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. All right, we've got Councilor Thomas.
I'm not sure to whom to direct this, so whoever is the proper person. If the only thing that happened at Mott's Green were the things that the city manager mentioned, such as cleaning the monuments, cleaning the light poles, everything except building a new entity of any type, whatever you want to call it. If the only thing was cleaning up down there, would we have to do this study?
I can answer that, yes. In fact, you would have to. Any GDOT project that has federal funding, they have to complete all these studies. The idea of them is to show the least amount of harm that the project may have. And for a project that is so low impact like that, GDOT doesn't really have a process in place to kind of take that into account. Their process is the same whether it's a large highway widening or it's a project as small as this one. So yes, we would still have to comply with it.
So if the only thing we were doing was washing the bricks on those monuments, we'd still have to do a $107,000
I don't know that it would be that
study?
magnitude, but you would still have, if it had federal money involved, yes ma'am, you'd have to comply with those laws. That's in the GDOT Environmental Procedures Manual, which is hundreds of pages long, and I could point you to.
Why don't we just do it ourselves? Why don't the city just fund the cleanup?
You're going to have to push your button, Councilor
Using
Allen, I can't get you.
$107,000 to me seems like we could do a lot of cleanup down at Mott's Green without going into all of this. And I will tell you that I personally am not going to vote for a bridge of any type to be built down there. I have been inundated with calls, and not a single solitary one of them has been build a bridge at Mott's Green. Some of them have said, let's build it somewhere else. Some of them have said, let's put up a plaque. Some of them have said, you know, but not a single one has said, build a bridge. So if you come back with building a bridge, my vote's going to be no. I'm not going to vote to do that. And it seems to me that if the things that you read out are what we want to do at Mott's Green, we can do that for $107,000 or slightly more, coordinated ourselves, no offense there, but less than $24,000, and get on with it. This just seems to me $1 million down there to clean up the monuments is ludicrous. I don't care where the money comes from, and I'm not going to vote to do that. Plus, once you do all of that, you got to maintain it. We don't have any money to maintain anything. So I just don't understand the push for all of this at Mott's Green. It's just, I'm sorry, I'm a little agitated about the whole thing.
Okay. Let's see, we've got Mayor Pro Tem.
Do we know when this got started and who brought it forward?
The records that I have is that it got started in 2009, and I can tell you the original coordinator, manager of the project at that time was former Deputy City Manager David Arrington, and as I understand it, it was the result of CSU students submitting a concept presentation to revitalize Mott's Green, is my understanding. And so it dates back to 2009. It's, and Madam Mayor, all I want is a vote. It can be yes or no, and we move on.
Yeah.
So it's not my project.
Well, and I know, and let me just say procedurally, so that council can do whatever it is council wants to do. A yes or no vote to the archaeology study simply just says we're not expending the $200,000 on the archaeology study. If in fact it's council's wish that there be no bridge there, a la what Councilor Thomas has just articulated, or anything remotely like a bridge there that she has said, and I think you said that you just want to spend the $200,000 cleaning things up, and if there's no path, then because council has already approved the project and approved the grant, I think there needs to be a motion to reconsider either or both of those motions, and then they need to be voted down. So that because right now we've got two resolutions, one approving the project and one approving the grant with DOT with these specific 60-foot bridge and replica and blah, 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 all this stuff. And so I just whatever, maybe you just want to deny the $107 now, whatever your pleasure is, or if you want to go forward with it and wait and see what the design is, as the city manager suggested, that's fine. But if you want to do away with the whole thing, as Councilor Thomas just articulated, or have no structure down there whatsoever, then that would need to be either at this meeting or some meeting in the near future, pulling what we've already approved. So I just want to lay that out for procedural consideration as you move the discussion forward. Does that answer?
I would also like to say that I was told this weekend that the black counselors were pushing this. That is totally untrue. This has nothing to do with black or white. And I resented being told that.
I was told that too. Yeah. All right. Let's see. We've got Councilor. Yes.
Is it possible for me to address the Mayor Pro Tem?
Well, okay, yes, and then we've got another council. So yeah, the questions were on the table, so certainly. But
okay. Let me just give you some background about why this project is what it is. I think that was the basis of the Mayor Pro Tem's question. For me, it started back in 2013 with a visit down there with David Arrington. That one, the Mott's Green area, we could see that all of the other areas around there, the Riverwalk 13th to 14th, the 14th Street Bridge, the plaza that leads up to Broadway, those were all coming to a close at a relatively similar time. But there was no money or project to renovate that Mott's Green area, and it needs it. There are plenty of photographs out there that I think have been shown before about the shape that area, the condition is in. As David and I were talking about that area, he was asking, what can we do to take this area and make it a true destination, or plus this area to really make it a special place along the Riverwalk and along the river. If you look at that whole area, the prime directive of that whole space is about history. The Mott House was there. The monuments that are there contain the pieces of the old Carnegie Library that was torn down when the Total System campus was put in. There used to be monuments down there the monuments are still down there, that have some of the stones, the dedication stones from the old mills that were torn down. And there used to be some graphics, some photographs and explanations about the mills and the importance of the mills to Columbus and why we are where we are. Now that the Mott House has been burned down, there are some great monuments there that take us all the way from the founding of Columbus up to Total System and everything in between, and the importance of that site to the history of Columbus. So in thinking about how to make that place better and more special, we knew it had to have two things. One is a sense of the history, and the second thing is authenticity to Columbus, Georgia. And I could not think of a better thing to commemorate than Horace King and the covered bridges, because if you look back at history, in the 1830s, after Columbus had just become a town, one of the very first things that the town did was to put out an offer to build a bridge to connect Columbus with the frontier, which Alabama was at that time. And of course, that's what brought Horace King to this valley. That was the first project of many that he and John Godwin built up and down the Chattahoochee. It is why Columbus has the success that it has for many years. It was the way for workers to live in Alabama, come to work at the mills in Georgia. It was a way for the cotton fields in Alabama to bring product over, to get on the steamships, to head to Apalachicola, to go to England. It was the heartbeat of Columbus, and Horace King was at the heart of it. Now, maybe I have a special place in my heart for Horace King. I'm an architect. He was an engineer. But what he achieved personally in his life is such a fantastic story, it needs to be told. Now, could we do that on a plaque? Yes, we could. Horace King, he lived, he died. Here's views of some of his bridges. But we wanted to take it further than that. We wanted to actually build a replica of a bridge that he would have built right next to that site. Now, the one thing that I regret is that the Ledger's article, when I finished reading it, I thought, what in the heck are we doing designing a crime-ridden homeless shelter on the river? And I would not feel badly if any of you thought that after reading that article. It completely misread the intention of that project, which is aspirational. Have you ever walked across a covered bridge? It has a special feel to it. It has a romance to it. It makes you feel like you have stepped back in time, that you can hear the clop of those mules behind you as you walk across. It is part of Columbus. It is central to our history. It seemed like a great thing to do at the time. I still believe in it. I would hope that you guys would believe in it, because, you know, the fact that something's going to require maintenance or that something might get torn up is not a great reason not to do anything. If it was, we wouldn't, you know, have done anything since South Commons. Things take maintenance, and yeah, people will tear it up, but let's do something that make our citizens proud that Columbus is such an exceptional place, and it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, we have Councilor Davis.
Mr. City Manager, I think the mayor's right. I think we need to give you a directive on this so you'll know where to go. I do have a question as far as the this concept of an extension off the Riverwalk that's already there. If that wasn't there, do you still have to do an architectural study? Do you still have to, archaeological study or an environmental study? Do you still have to do these if there was no extension off the Riverwalk?
That is my understanding, and I think that's what the engineer just
Matt,
said.
can you confirm or somebody confirm into the microphone? So we have.
It's the fact that it is federal money. It's not the size of the project or the location of the project. It is the fact that you are accepting $800,000 of federal money. And they've made it very clear that it's not the size or where the project is located.
Well, and here, that's another thing too. I think that, I know we've had, and first of all, I want to speak to the council. I really appreciate you delaying this until I got back, because I've had a lot of concerns on this. And look, maybe people don't really realize what I do, but for the last 18 years, this is exactly my field, okay? My job in my business, I'm a developer. I do projects. My job is to limit the risk and liability in these projects to see that they're successful ultimately. That's what I do. And when I started looking into this, conceptual drawing is one thing, a conceptual concept, site plan is one thing, but when you start looking at rendered drawings, that's another thing. So I really consider this as being in the first step of a draft phase, of a concept phase. It is. We're still in a concept phase. And there's no determination as far as this is a grant, okay? This is a grant from the GDOT, down from the federal government. Their requirements are already stated. Matter of fact, their requirements were stated before, I believe, Mr. Clark, you entered into a contract with the city. And as a developer, I would certainly question those issues of what you signed up for in the contract and moving forward. I do have a concern with Councilor Allen of the $24,000 management fee, because these gentlemen are already contracted by the DOT. They're the people you have to go to. Matter of fact, they're the people that the DOT said you have to go to. So I'm having a hard time understanding the management fee for a consultant or another professional that does a specific task or a specific project. I do have a problem with that, and I'm going to state it. But look, this, what's ironic here is that back during those days, if you really look at the history like you were talking about, there were a lot of issues and concerns back then with the council and the mayor back then, a lot of issues, okay? And it's ironic, that today we have the same concerns. And as a developer, I'm looking at this project, okay? I appreciate the historical aspect. I appreciate the ideology. I appreciate the creativity. I appreciate all those things. That's great, but we have to look at reality and where we're at now. I did take a look, I did take some time to go into some of the other efforts that have been done as far as master plans in Columbus, especially down on the Riverwalk. I think there's been several concepts throughout time, over the course of time, that ultimately, I think it was just these things, there were issues, there was financial considerations, all this kind of stuff. So a lot of this stuff got dropped. This is somewhat a new concept, and even at that, I do question if, really, if we proceed forward with this under the current conditions, I mean, we're already exhausting over 20% of the revenue that's being used to support this project. I question even doing the project as it's being proposed, okay, if you're even going to make it happen for that. You're talking about a custom structure that's going to be placed there. I think there's change orders in the way. I think it's going to cost a lot more than $1 million to do what you're trying to accomplish there and doing this extension out into the river. That's just the way I'm looking at it. I don't want to get deep into it, okay, and I appreciate the spirited debates and all that, but I can't, I've got so many questions, and there's so many question marks in the end of it that I cannot approve an extension off the Riverwalk of Mott's Green Plaza. I just can't. It's just not matching up. We got a pedestrian bridge there. It's great. I've heard there may be some other efforts to try to do some of these things, same things that you're talking about, and that may happen. The private sector may do exactly that. There may be some other locations that might be ideal for what we're talking about. But certainly, I think the challenges and the concerns and the issues are numerous. Mayor, I think we do need to give the city manager a directive here. I think every one of us, when this started, every one of us, 95%, when it was brought to us, 95% of what we agreed to do was improve Mott's Green Plaza. Matter of fact, I remember talking to Rick Jones, and we had a meeting here. Director Jones, we had a meeting here with the pedestrian bridge. I think we talked about cleaning up that area of Mott's Green Plaza. It was really in bad shape. I think that's what we want to do. We all want to do that 100%. But this extension seems to be a concern. I really think we need to remove that extension and then give the architect the flexibility to move forward and to clean up the area. If you want to memorialize a part of history of what has taken place there's several ways you can do it. Mr. Clark stated that. There's several ways you can do that and still stay within the grant amount that's there. Now, under the contract, it says you can't go over. You go over, you go and spend your own money. It does say you have to match up to the 20% of it, and it does say if you don't use it all, you can't use it on another project. You'll just have to go back. And I really think that the contract, the way I read it, is very flexible, and it's a local grant, a request from the local municipality, and so the DOT's got their requirements that you got to go through, and as you go through them, they're going to let this, when it starts getting to those phases, as long as you meet it, but I think they're going to do whatever you ask them to do, whatever you ask them to approve. So I don't think there's any danger of us losing the grant. I think the goal and objective of all of us is to rehabilitate and just to clean up Mott's Green Plaza. Maybe you can do some additional things there that would accomplish all this without the matter of the extension. If what the city manager says, we have to have an archaeological study regardless if there's an extension, right?
That's correct.
Or an environmental study, you got to do it anyway. I can't, Mr. Clark, I just cannot approve a management fee. I just can't. I wouldn't do it in my own business, and I can't do it here. I think 10% is a fair, a reasonable number to do this project. And I do question that, but I do think council needs to give a directive to the city manager because I think that's what the staff and everybody's looking for, and let's just move on. So I'll make that motion if we need to do it today through a resolution, as the mayor stated. That we just, and if it needs to be a subsequent motion, I'll make that. I know there's a motion on the table. There's no second, but.
Right, and I'll call that in a minute. So what's your motion? What were you saying your motion?
Well, my motion would be to remove the, whatever we're calling it, an extension, a replica, a bridge, a crosswalk, whatever it is. That seems to be the obstacle right now and the challenge. To remove that and just focus all the rehabilitation efforts and improvements on Mott's Green Plaza. Take the $1 million, do whatever you can do to make Mott's Green Plaza nice.
Okay.
I think that's what citizens have communicated to me. I think at the end of the day, that seems to be the wise route for all of us, especially with the challenges that we're confronting in this city and dealing with. I mean, we got numerous.
Right, and that's what I just want to see if we can reconcile motions. If we can't, we can't. My understanding was what the Mayor Pro Tem moved for and what the city manager was recommending is that we approve the archaeology study, which I'll put a pin in that because I got a question about that, but approve the archaeology study because that's a requirement of the grant, and I hear you saying you want to keep the grant, but to come back with a redesign that may not even include this bridge. And I think in light of a further conversation that it may not include a bridge or any sort of replica at all, that would be the Mayor Pro Tem's motion. That sounds similar to what you said, because you were saying you absolutely don't want a bridge. With that direction, I think people could come back with additional proposals. But it sounds like we have to approve this archaeology study regardless. Now, let me ask about as they formulate what their motion's going to be. Will the archaeology study, would it be modified in cost based on the scope of the project?
I can address that to some extent, not knowing exactly what we're looking
Right.
at. But I should clarify, too, it's not simply archaeology studies.
Mhm.
We have to comply with the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA, so we have to produce a NEPA document because there was some activity in the river. There's Corps involvement. There's U.S. Fish and Wildlife, ecology studies, that's all part of this, as well as architectural history. And because it's a National Historic Landmark District, even though most of the buildings in that area, unfortunately, we've lost them, the boundary's still in the books. That's part of the reason this project is getting a little bit more scrutiny, perhaps, than it usually would be. But yes, if the scope of the project is decreased, we would go back and look at what we've done to date and what still needs to be done and make sure those things line up. So presumably, yes, the scope of it would decrease along with the footprint of the project.
So if the project was going to be reformed in some way, then it might not be $107,000.
I'm not sure. Some of those studies are going to have to be done because the main thing that might be reduced would be because we don't have any activity in the river anymore, or presumably if that structure came out. So there's some things there that we might not have to do, but as far as the rest of the footprint of the project, it's pretty much the same. Say the archaeology study, the history study, and those things probably wouldn't change very much.
Well, I don't want to delay it any more than it has to be delayed, but it sounds like, and I don't know what the pressure is related to the grant timing, but it's hard for me to wrap my head around approving a specific price tag on an environmental impact study that may change depending on council's will related to the design. So it seems like, I think, you would want to delay it to get some sort of design that people could wrap their heads around and then decide whether we want this grant or not. Because if it comes back and it's still something that they just say, hey, look, this, as representatives of the city, we don't want this, then we just need to give the money back. We need to say, well, we'll apply for the next one. I mean, but if we can get our heads around a particular design, then we need to know how much that environmental impact study is going to be. So that's kind of what it sounds like to me, is I don't know how we approve an environmental impact study if the design is that much in limbo, so.
Well, I guess my thought, Madam Mayor, if we got the environmental archaeological study approved today, and I mean, you could, in the motion, it could be a directive not to exceed and because obviously we would have to go in and they'd have to detail it out, and we would know the cost, and we know that at this point it should not exceed the 107 based on what you don't want to do, and then I mean, it's kind of like an RFP. I mean, there's some negotiation going on regarding what they're going to do, considering we're not doing a bridge and we're not doing this, and we know that we've got a budget. We know the match is $200,000. We know the environmental archaeological study is not going to exceed now $107,000 based on a change in scope of work, and we can at least secure the grant, and we would report back to you on what we are going to be doing from an environmental archaeological standpoint, and we would be doing some concept designs excluding a bridge that we would be bringing back to you, and you still got the final approval.
Okay.
You know, I'm just trying to secure the grant and make sure that we're going to be able to take care of Mott's Green, and we can at least work on all of the details in terms of concept design and what the structure will be, if any.
Okay, we've got counselors lined up here. Yeah, let Councilor Davis.
Ms. City Manager, I think the mayor's partially right in what she just said about as far as we probably do need to delay the aspect, and depending on if we give you a directive to move forward with the Mott's Green Plaza rehabilitation without an extension, just remove the extension, it's still the same project. The contract, we already got a contract in place. We're not, as far as getting the grant, eliminating the grant's already been approved. It's just a matter of what we submit to them. There's various phases that you got to go through. We're still in a design phase. maybe not even there, maybe still in a conceptual phase and through the preliminary engineering phase. We're there. I mean, we don't even know. I wonder if the archaeological study comes back and says, nah, you can't do that. Then you're going to have to scrap it anyway. I mean, it's not going to work. We don't know that yet. So it's still in the conceptual stage. If we give the architect some direction, if the staff has some direction, I think that's the right route to go, and then they can determine what the cost will be at that point, and then we can approve it at a later date. But I think the key thing here is giving you some directive to move forward with the project, and with the removal of the extension. I'm just going to call it an extension, or whatever the concept is, and just rehabilitate and improve, do the enhancements in Mott's Green Plaza. That's the name of the project, and I think that's what we should stay to, and that's what my motion would be, unless that's the motion of Mayor Pro Tem. I just need to know. I would ask Mr. Clark if he would consider some of the conversation we've had today on this matter, and maybe if we come back that there can be some adjustments in those areas.
Okay, I've got two expert opinions saying it sounds like you and the Mayor Pro Tem are saying the same thing. Do you think that Councilor Davis and you are saying the same thing? All right, let's see, maybe I can...
I mean, I'll state my motion, and if Mayor Pro Tem can tell me if it's right or not.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, the motion is just to give a directive to the staff, to the architect, all involved, to move forward with the Mott's Green Plaza and just remove the extension, not to do the extension, but whatever the rehabilitation enhancements there that need to be done to turn that into a really nice, cleaned up area would be the appropriate thing to do. I think that's a happy medium for everybody.
That's fine.
Okay. And that's the second. Okay. All right.
And then I guess the other part would be to staff to get with the professionals and then talk about how the adjustments will take place from that standpoint, as you stated, Ms. City Manager.
Sure.
Okay. We got a motion, a second. We got folks, though, lined up. I think they were lined up before, but nevertheless, we've got Councilor Huff. Whoa, where'd you go? Hit it back on. There you go.
Okay. Yeah, we've gone round and back and round and round and round, but I'm on the same page with the other councilors here. The extension is the problem. So if we remove the extension from the plan, we all wanted to do the renovations and updates of Mott's Green and everything, and whatever you have to add, statues or whatever, but just not the extension. The pedestrian bridge is beautiful up there. If you want to stand out on the bridge and look out on the water, it's already there. We have the river walk for you to go down to. So there's really no reason to have the extension. So I'm in agreement with them without prolonging everything. Yeah, if we move forward from that point, I think we'll all be on the same page. Thank you.
All right, we've got Councilor Thomas.
Mr. Clark, I went back to our last meeting and watched the section where you spoke at our last meeting, and I watched it about 4 times to make sure that I heard what I thought I heard. And what I thought I heard you say was that these studies have already been done.
That's correct. They are in process right now. We submitted.
Okay, that's not the same thing, Mr. Clark. Have the studies been done, or are they in process, or are you waiting for us to approve paying for them before you start them?
Well, I know they are in process. Matt, can you speak to what has been completed?
We've just now received some notices from y'all about who needs to be contacted. I just got one this week saying contact all these various people so you can talk to them. So I don't know how it can be done if you hadn't talked to those people.
Right, well, it kind of depends. There's sort of a resource identification phase where you go out and see what's out there. You literally look, like the archaeology survey is to see what is in the area. The historic resources survey is to document what's in the area. Same thing with the ecology and the aquatics. So that's kind of the point we've gotten to, which is these are all studies that are going to be required for this regardless, because this footprint's not going to change that much. What we haven't started working on, because it's still early, sort of preliminary and conceptual, is the impact studies, which is the second half of the sorts of studies that GDOT requires. So those studies have not been completed. So not having spoken with some of the other specialists, I mean, I know approximately where they are, but there's still additional work to do, and that's what can be, potentially rescoped if the project scope changes. But the identification studies are they are what they are, simply because I don't think we really had to do anything related to the river, because that area had already been studied before. So I don't know to what extent the identification studies would be minimized if there was an activity in the river. So everything that would be happening within Mott's Green, that would all sort of remain the same. Did that make sense, that there's resource identification?
Well,
and impact analysis?
it didn't make sense if you're saying that you don't think that even, that under the current situation, you don't have to study the river. That's where the bridge was going.
Right, we have been scoped to study the river. We were able to include some prior studies by reference in the new documents.
Did your organization do the original studies?
The archaeologist did. He's a sub-consultant to us, Southern Research. They did some of the prior studies, but no, our firm did not do some of those prior studies. I'm not actually sure who.
That was Jordan Jones and Golding.
Okay, JJ&G, Jordan Jones and Golding.
Okay. And so what we are looking at now in this motion is to approve the $107,000 and move forward on just the Mott's Green, or not to approve the $107,000?
No. My understanding of the motion was that we refer it back to the city manager and the consultants to come up with a design pursuant to some of the conversation here, and then come back to us with what that impact study would cost. That's what I understood.
Right.
Is that what you understood? That's what
I
understood. Yes.
But I tell you,
my expert consultant.
My thing would be, obviously, I think we need to agree on the design, the concept, before we ask them to do. You can't put, in my mind, the cart before the horse. If we don't agree on what the design is going to be
Before they can decide what has to be studied.
Yeah, because.
Okay.